The lottery. 1. The air we breathe. Cole Davidson's lungs burned. Not from lack of oxygen, his tank still had 12 hours of air, but from the psychological weight of watching the massive screens in Central Square flash name after name, none of them his. The dense crowd of anxious citizens pressed against him, a sea of masks and tubes, all eyes fixed on the lottery results. Each person clutched their tank gauges like talismans. Some gasped in relief when their names appeared, others slumped in familiar disappointment. Cole tapped his gauge again, the display flickering between 11:57 and 11:58. Too close. Far too close. Final allocations for District 7, announced the computerized voice, its artificial cheerfulness echoing across the square. Thank you for your participation. Remember, conservation is survival. The next drawing will occur in 7 days. The screens shifted to the city's emblem, a stylized oxygen molecule inside a protective dome. The crowd began to disperse, conversations a mix of relieved laughter and desperate whispers. Cole remained frozen in place, staring at the now blank screens. This was the third drawing in a row his name hadn't appeared. "Tough break," said a voice behind him. A heavy hand fell on his shoulder. "You've got enough to make it to next week?" Cole turned to face Marcus Wells, his broad-shouldered frame immediately recognizable even with the standard-issue mask covering half his face. As a mid-level maintenance worker, Marcus had a better quality breathing apparatus than most in the lower levels, though nothing like the sleek designs worn by the elites. "Barely," Cole answered, tapping his gauge. 12 hours. I'll have to find some extra work." Marcus grimaced behind his mask, eyes crinkling at the corners. "That's cutting it close, even for you." He lowered his voice. "I might be able to get you onto a vent cleaning crew tomorrow. It's not much, but it comes with a 4-hour supplement. I'll take anything at this point." They began walking away from the square, moving through the cramped streets of the lower level. Overhead, air quality monitors flashed red warnings, their electronic displays bathing everything in a sickly crimson glow. Citizens of varying status streamed past them, the well-to-do with their high-quality equipment hardly giving them a second glance, workers with basic masks nodding in solidarity. "You know," Marcus said as they navigated through a particularly crowded section, "you wouldn't be in this situation if you'd just keep your head down and your mouth shut." Cole snorted. "Yeah, and I'd still be getting the minimum ration instead of nothing at all. Minimum is better than nothing." "Is it?" Cole stopped walking, forcing Marcus to turn and face him. "Is barely surviving actually living? Having just enough air to make it to work to earn just enough air to make it to work again?" Marcus glanced around nervously. "Keep your voice down. That kind of talk gets people shortlisted." "I think I'm already there," Cole muttered, resuming their walk. The walls around them were plastered with propaganda posters. Oxygen conservation is everyone's duty, and report wasteful breathing among the most common. They reached a junction where the path split, one corridor leading deeper into the lower levels, the other ascending toward the mid-levels where Marcus lived. "Come by the maintenance office early tomorrow," Marcus said. "I'll see what I can do about that vent job." "Thanks, I mean it." "And Cole?" Marcus's voice took on a rare, serious tone. "Get a life, will you? Focus on surviving instead of questioning things. The outside air is toxic. That's why we're all stuck in here. The system may not be perfect, but it's what we've got." "Right," Cole replied, not believing it for a second. "See you tomorrow." They parted ways, Cole heading down the narrow corridor that led to his tiny apartment. The fluorescent lighting flickered overhead, casting strange shadows on the metal walls. Every few meters, another propaganda poster reminded citizens of their duty to conserve. Cole's home was a one-room cubicle, barely 3 meters square. A bed, a sink, a toilet behind a thin partition, and a small table made up the entirety of his living space. The walls were bare metal except for a small shelf above his bed, where he kept his most precious possession. He sat heavily on the thin mattress, removing his breathing apparatus carefully. Inside the sealed apartment, the air was thin but breathable, part of the basic ration allocated to all citizens. It wasn't enough to sustain activity, but it kept you alive while resting. Cole reached for the shelf and picked up the old mask that had belonged to his mother. It was outdated technology now, bulky and inefficient compared to modern equipment, but he polished it regularly, keeping it in working condition despite not having used it in years. The memories came unbidden, as they always did when he held the mask. He was 7 again, huddled in a corner of their apartment, the alarms blaring as the sector experienced an unexpected air shortage. His mother, her face pale but determined, removing her own mask and placing it over his small face. "Breathe, Cole," she had whispered, her voice already growing weak. "Just breathe." He had screamed behind the mask, tried to take it off to give it back to her, but she held it firmly in place until she collapsed. By the time help arrived, she was gone. Cole placed the mask back on the shelf, a familiar hollow feeling in his chest. 18 years later, and the system hadn't changed. The poor still died when air ran short, while the elites never seemed to worry about their next breath. His door chimed, pulling him from his thoughts. When he opened it, Marcus stood there, looking troubled. "Thought you'd want to know," Marcus said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "They've adjusted the lottery algorithm again, fewer names being called in the lower levels." Cole's jaw tightened. "So they're not even pretending it's random anymore?" "It's not official, just rumors in the maintenance corps." Marcus lowered his voice. "The order supposedly came directly from the mayor's office." "Mayor Vane," Cole spat the name like a curse, "the benevolent leader who makes sure we all get our fair share." "Keep that kind of talk to yourself," Marcus warned. "But there's more. I heard there might be a special allocation job tomorrow, upper-level ductwork, 8-hour supplement pay." Cole straightened. "That would get me through to the next drawing." "Maybe," Marcus hesitated. "It's in the government sector. Security checks, proper identification, no outbursts, no questions. I can keep my mouth shut when I need to." "Good, because this is coming directly from Supervisor Hadley, and he's sticking his neck out even mentioning your name after what happened last month." Cole nodded, remembering his public questioning of the lottery results that had earned him a reputation as a troublemaker. "I'll be there, early." "Good." Marcus moved toward the door, then paused. "And Cole? I mean it about keeping quiet. The upper levels, they're different. You'll see things that don't make sense. Just do the job, get your air, and get out." After Marcus left, Cole lay back on his bed, staring at the metal ceiling. 12 hours of air. Possibly an 8-hour supplement tomorrow. It would be enough. Barely. But the pattern was clear. His name being randomly skipped in the lottery. 3 times in a row wasn't coincidence. Someone had marked him. He closed his eyes, trying to conserve energy. Tomorrow would require all his strength. The next morning found Cole deep in the upper sections of the city, crawling through ventilation ducts with a scrubbing tool and filter vacuum. The work was exhausting and filthy, but it paid in the currency that mattered most: air. His tank gauge now read 16 hours, thanks to the supplement issued at the start of his shift. "Section 22, be complete," he reported into his comm unit. "Moving to 22C. "Acknowledged," came the board response from the maintenance supervisor. "Remember not to disturb any offices. The council is in session today." Cole grunted an affirmative and continued moving through the narrow metal passageway. The ducts in the upper levels were notably cleaner than those below, with finer filtration systems and better maintenance schedules. Another inequality in a system built on them. As he approached Vent 22C, voices drifted up from below. Cole paused, instinctively quieting his movements. Through the slats of the vent he could see into a richly appointed corridor. 2 figures stood talking, their backs to him. "The allocation adjustments are causing unrest in the lower levels," said a woman's voice, cultured and precise. "Complaints have increased 20% since last month." "The rabble always complains," replied a male voice, dismissive and imperious. "They fail to understand the necessities of resource management. Air must be prioritized for productive citizens." The woman shifted slightly, and Cole caught his first glimpse of her face in profile. Young, perhaps early 20s, with an elegant bearing that marked her as upper-level born. Something about her struck him as different from the typical elite, a thoughtfulness in her expression, a tension in her posture. "And who defines productive, father?" she asked, a hint of challenge in her tone. The man turned, and Cole nearly gasped, recognizing the distinguished profile of Mayor Thaddeus Vane himself. His gray hair was immaculately styled, his breathing apparatus barely visible. A small, discreet device that marked the height of technological privilege. "We do, Elara," the mayor replied coldly. "The council does. Those who maintain order and progress, not those who waste resources asking pointless questions." The young woman, Elara, straightened her spine. "Like my birth father did?" A tense silence followed, broken only when the mayor stepped closer to her, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper Cole could barely hear. "That's enough. We have a council meeting in 10 minutes, and I expect you to observe and learn, not interject with your humanitarian concerns." They moved away down the corridor, and Cole released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The mayor's daughter. And from the sound of it, not entirely aligned with her father's policies. Cole finished cleaning the vent and moved on to the next section, but his mind kept returning to the exchange he'd overheard. When his shift ended 6 hours later, he'd completed the work efficiently enough to earn a positive supervisor report, and hopefully a place on future upper-level maintenance crews. As he was turning in his equipment, a commotion near the security checkpoint caught his attention. A group of workers had gathered, watching something on one of the security monitors. Cole edged closer. On the screen was a live feed from the council chamber. Mayor Vane stood at a podium, addressing the gathered council members. Behind him sat several observers, including Elara, her expression carefully neutral as her father spoke. "And so we must adjust allocations accordingly," the mayor was saying. "District 7 has shown concerning patterns of consumption. The proposed 10% reduction in their lottery allocations will encourage more responsible usage." Cole's fists clenched. District 7, his district. 10% fewer names called meant 10% more people would find themselves in his situation, hovering at the edge of suffocation. "But sir," interrupted one of the council members, "our reports indicate District 7 already has the highest conservation efficiency ratings." "Conservation is about more than efficiency," the mayor replied smoothly. "It's about attitude. District 7 has become a hotbed of lottery skepticism and resource questioning. This adjustment will help remind them of the realities we face." Cole couldn't contain himself. "He's punishing us for asking questions," he blurted out, drawing startled looks from the workers around him. "Quiet," hissed one of them. "You want to lose your supplement?" But it was too late. A security officer had noticed the disturbance and was approaching. Cole recognized the hard-faced man immediately. Security Chief Hayes, the mayor's personal enforcer. "Name and authorization," Hayes demanded, his voice clipped. "Cole Davidson. Temporary maintenance authorization for sectors 22A through 22E, Cole replied, swallowing his anger. Hayes studied him, cold eyes calculating. "Lower-level worker. What are you doing watching council proceedings?" "Just turning in my equipment, sir." The screen caught my attention. "Indeed?" Hayes glanced at his portable terminal. "Davidson? I see your name has been flagged in the lottery system." Cole's heart sank. Confirmed, then, he was being deliberately excluded. "Perhaps you need a reminder about the importance of respectful behavior," Hayes continued. "Your allocation supplement for today's work is reduced by half." "That's not fair," Cole protested. "I completed all assigned sectors." 4 hours instead of 8, Hayes continued as if Cole hadn't spoken. "And consider yourself fortunate it's not 0. Dismissed." Cole had no choice but to accept the reduced payment, his tank now showing 20 hours instead of the 24 he'd earned. Still enough to make it to the next drawing, but the injustice burned in his chest. As he made his way to the lower-level access elevators, a voice called out to him. "Wait! Maintenance worker!" Cole turned to find Elara Vane hurrying toward him, her security detail a few paces behind, looking uncomfortable with her initiative. "Ms. Vane," Cole acknowledged, keeping his tone neutral though his pulse quickened. "You dropped this," she said, holding out a maintenance credential that Cole knew wasn't his. As he reached for it, she pressed it into his palm along with something else, small and cylindrical. "Be more careful with your belongings." Their eyes met briefly, and Cole saw something unexpected: intelligence, awareness, and what appeared to be genuine concern. "Thank you," he managed, closing his fingers around the objects. She nodded once and turned away, rejoining her security detail, who looked relieved to resume their normal formation around her. Only when Cole was alone in the elevator did he examine what she'd given him. The credential was indeed not his, but it would grant him access to upper-level maintenance areas for the next week. The cylindrical object was even more valuable: a 2-hour emergency air capsule, the kind elite security personnel carried for emergencies. Small, concentrated, and worth more than Cole earned in a month. Why would the mayor's daughter risk helping him? The question troubled Cole as he made his way back to his apartment. Once inside, he carefully stored the emergency capsule in a hidden compartment beneath his sink, insurance against the worst-case scenario. He collapsed onto his bed, exhaustion overtaking his body. The day's events swirled in his mind: the overheard conversation, the mayor's announcement, Hayes's punishment, and Elara's unexpected assistance. Something didn't add up. As sleep claimed him, one thought remained clear: the system wasn't just unfair, it was deliberately manipulated. And somehow, the mayor's daughter seemed to know it too. For the next week, Cole used the credential Elara had given him to access upper-level maintenance shifts, carefully avoiding Security Chief Hayes and building up his air reserves. Each day he kept an eye out for Elara but didn't catch sight of her again. On the 6th day, as he worked near the government administration offices, an announcement echoed through the halls. All citizens are reminded that tomorrow's lottery drawing will include special allocations for exemplary conservation efforts. Attendance is mandatory for all districts. Cole had just finished a particularly difficult cleaning job when he rounded a corner and collided with someone coming from the opposite direction. The impact sent items scattering across the floor: a data tablet, several document folders, and a personal air purifier. "I'm sorry, I didn't," he began, kneeling to gather the fallen items, then stopped when he realized who he'd bumped into. "Ms. Vane." Elara looked equally surprised, her security detail noticeably absent. "It's fine," she said quickly, helping to collect her belongings. "It was my fault. I was distracted." Cole handed her the data tablet, their fingers brushing briefly. "Thank you for the credential," he said quietly. "It's helped." She glanced around to ensure they were alone. "You're Cole Davidson, correct? From District 7? He nodded, surprised she knew his name. "Your air allocation was cut in half unfairly last week," she continued. "I saw it happen." "Why would you care about a lower-level worker's air allocation?" Cole asked, unable to keep the suspicion from his voice. Elara hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "Not everyone in the upper levels agrees with the current system." "Including the mayor's daughter?" "Stepdaughter," she corrected. "And it's complicated." She glanced at her watch. "I can't talk here, but if you want to understand more, meet me at Maintenance Junction T18 after your shift ends." Before Cole could respond, she gathered her remaining items and hurried away. Cole spent the rest of his shift debating whether to meet her. It could be a trap, a test of his loyalty, or an excuse to revoke his access. But curiosity and something else, a feeling he couldn't quite name, pushed him toward taking the risk. Junction T18 was a rarely used maintenance hub connecting several ventilation systems. When Cole arrived, the space was dimly lit and apparently empty. "You came," said Elara's voice from the shadows. She stepped forward, now dressed in simpler clothing that wouldn't immediately mark her as an elite. "I wasn't sure you would." "I'm still not sure I should have," Cole replied. "What is this about?" "I've seen your name in the security reports. You've been asking questions about the lottery system." Cole tensed. "Is that what this is? An unofficial interrogation?" Elara shook her head. Number, I've been asking the same questions. But I have access to information you don't. She pulled out her data tablet and activated it, the screen illuminating her face with a blue glow. Look at these lottery allocation patterns from the past 6 months. Cole moved closer to see the screen. It showed distribution graphs across all districts, with clear inequalities that couldn't be explained by population differences alone. The lottery isn't random, Cole said, voicing what he'd long suspected. It never has been, Elara confirmed. It's a control mechanism. The council decides which districts receive what percentage of allocations, and security flags individuals who cause trouble. Like me. Like you. She swiped to another screen. This is the algorithm adjustment my father ordered last week for District 7. The technical details were complex, but the impact was clear. A systematic reduction targeting specific blocks within the district. Why are you showing me this? Cole asked. Aren't you afraid I'll tell someone? Elara gave a bitter laugh. Who would believe you? And who would you tell that hasn't already been compromised? She closed the tablet. I'm showing you because I need to know if my suspicions are correct. And you're the only person I've found who seems to see through the system. What suspicions? She hesitated. My birth father died when I was 3. I was told it was due to an air shortage accident, but I found inconsistencies in the records, and he was asking questions about the air distribution system before he died. Cole felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ambient temperature. You think your father, the mayor, had something to do with it? I don't know, she admitted, but I need to find out. And I need someone who understands the lower levels, someone outside the system of privilege and obligation I'm trapped in. So I'm what? Your guide to how the other half suffocates? She flinched. I deserve that. But no, that's not what I'm asking. I'm asking for your help investigating the truth. In exchange, I can provide you with information, access, and protection. To a point. Cole studied her face, looking for signs of deception. Instead, he saw something painfully familiar, the same need for truth that had driven him to risk his own survival. When's your next access to the lottery systems? He asked finally. Relief washed over her features. Tomorrow, during the drawing, I'm expected to observe from the control room. Then we need to be ready. If you can get me raw data from previous allocations, I might be able to spot patterns that would prove manipulation. For the next hour, they made plans in the dim maintenance junction, an unlikely alliance forming between them. When they finally parted ways, Cole felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. The central square was more crowded than usual for the lottery drawing. Cole stood among his fellow District 7 residents, his tank gauge reading a relatively comfortable 36 hours, enough to weather another exclusion if it came to that. The credential Elara had provided had been worth its weight in oxygen. The massive screens flickered to life, showing the city emblem before transitioning to the face of Mayor Vane. A collective hush fell over the crowd. Citizens of our great city, the mayor began, his voice reverberating through the square. Today we celebrate another successful conservation period. Through your diligence and sacrifice, we continue to survive in a world where the very air has turned against humanity. Cole scanned the edges of the square, noting the increased security presence. Hayes stood to the right of the main platform, his gaze sweeping methodically over the crowd. Before we begin today's allocation drawing, the mayor continued, I would like to announce a special initiative. In recognition of exemplary conservation efforts, we will be increasing allocations to Districts 1 through 3 by 5%. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Districts 1 through 3 were predominantly upper and mid-upper residential areas. No mention of relief for the struggling lower districts. The lottery will now commence, announced the computerized voice, taking over from the mayor's introduction. Names began flashing on the screen, citizens moving forward to claim their allocations when called. Cole watched carefully, mentally counting the District 7 names compared to others. As suspected, they were appearing at a significantly lower rate. His comm unit vibrated in his pocket, a text-only message from an encoded source. Algorithm confirmed. 40% reduction for D7. Check central control panel. Left side. E. Cole's eyes darted to the central platform where the lottery controls were housed. The mayor stood beside the main panel, occasionally pressing what appeared to be adjustment buttons. Not just content to rig the system beforehand, he was actively manipulating it during the drawing. Anger surged through Cole, hot and immediate. Before he could consider the consequences, he was pushing his way toward the front of the crowd. "He's changing the results!" Cole shouted, pointing at the mayor. "The lottery is rigged!" Heads turned. Security personnel immediately began moving toward him. "The mayor is manually removing names from District 7. Cole continued, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent square. "Look at him! He's doing it right now!" Mayor Vane's expression hardened as he spotted Cole. "Security, remove that man. He's clearly oxygen-deprived and delusional." Hayes and 2 officers seized Cole, dragging him toward the platform. Rather than removing him from the square, however, they brought him up to face the mayor, a public example to be made. "Cole Davidson," the mayor announced, consulting a datapad handed to him by an aide. "Multiple infractions for questioning resource allocation. Suspected of unauthorized access to restricted areas." He looked up, addressing the crowd. "This is what happens when conservation protocols are ignored. Oxygen deprivation leads to paranoia and delusion." Hayes roughly grabbed Cole's tank, checking the gauge. "Sir, his levels are at 36 hours, well above minimum." A flicker of annoyance crossed the mayor's face before he smoothly continued. "Then we have a more serious problem. A deliberate attempt to undermine public confidence in our survival systems." He raised his voice. "As a demonstration of the consequences of such behavior, Citizen Davidson's allocation will be restricted to minimum levels for the next 30 days. Hayes adjusted something on Cole's tank. The gauge dropped rapidly, settling at 12 hours, the bare minimum to survive until the next drawing, with no margin for work or extra activity. "Let this be a lesson," the mayor concluded. "The system protects us all, but only if we all comply with its requirements." Cole was dragged from the platform and deposited roughly at the edge of the square. The lottery resumed as if nothing had happened, but he could feel eyes on him, some sympathetic, others fearful of association with a troublemaker. As the crowd began to disperse after the drawing, Cole noticed something else. People were talking, whispering. His outburst had planted a seed of doubt. He made his way back to his apartment, mentally calculating how to survive on the restricted allocation. When he arrived, he was surprised to find his door slightly ajar. Cautiously, Cole pushed it open to find Elara waiting inside. "That was either very brave or very foolish," she said, without preamble. "Probably both," Cole admitted, closing the door. "Did you get what we needed?" She nodded, holding up a data stick. Complete lottery records for the past 5 years, including the override commands used today. Her expression was grim. "You were right. The system has been manipulated from the beginning." "We need to get this information public somehow," Cole said, sitting heavily on his bed. "It's not that simple. My father controls all communication channels, and after your display today, you'll be under surveillance." She hesitated. "There's something else you should see." She handed him another data tablet, this one displaying personnel records. "I found this in my father's private study. It's about your mother." Cole's heart lurched as he took the tablet. On the screen was his mother's citizen file, including her death certificate. But what caught his attention was a notation in the margin. "Prioritized for reduction, due to association with Victor Vane inquiries." "Who's Victor Vane?" Cole asked, his voice hollow. "My father's brother. He supposedly died in an air shortage accident 35 years ago." Elara's voice was tight. "I've found references to him in sealed records, always connected to air quality questions and system integrity concerns." "They killed my mother because of what she knew," Cole said, the realization washing over him like ice water. "And they likely killed your father for the same reason." Elara nodded solemnly. And your public accusation today has put you in the same category. Cole lifted his gaze to meet hers. Then we don't have much time. We need to find concrete proof of what they're doing. I have an idea, Elara said, leaning closer. But it's dangerous. And we'll need help. Marcus, Cole suggested. My friend from maintenance. He doesn't believe the system is corrupted, but he might help if I can convince him. Good, because we're going to need access to the lottery administration offices, and that requires maintenance credentials we don't have. When? Tonight, Elara said firmly, before they can increase security or move evidence. Can you contact your friend? Cole reached for his comm unit. I'll try. But, Elara, if we're caught... I know, she interrupted. For you, it's execution. For me, probably treatment for delusional behavior in a secure facility. The same fate my father's brother likely suffered. The stakes were clear. The plan was desperate. But as Cole sent a message to Marcus, he felt something solidify within him, a determination that transcended fear. This wasn't just about air allocation anymore. It was about truth, justice, and the memory of those who had been silenced. The lottery administration building was quiet during night cycle, its corridors dimly lit by emergency lighting. Using Marcus's reluctantly provided credentials and Elara's knowledge of security protocols, they had managed to enter undetected. Now they stood in the main control room, Elara working frantically at a terminal while Cole kept watch at the door. Anything? He whispered, glancing nervously at his air gauge. The 12-hour restriction meant he had little margin for extended activity. I'm in the main database, Elara replied, her fingers flying over the keyboard. But most of these files are encrypted. Look for anything about removal or adjustment, Cole suggested. Elara nodded, continuing to search. After several tense minutes, she let out a soft exclamation. Here, a restricted directory labeled Allocation Management. It requires executive authorization. Can you bypass it? I can try using my father's authorization pattern. I've watched him enter it enough times. She input a complex sequence, holding her breath as the system processed it. The screen flashed green, then displayed a list of files. I'm in, she breathed. Together they scrolled through the documents, finding exactly what they'd suspected. Detailed protocols for manipulating the lottery based on citizen compliance, questioning, and political reliability. More disturbing were files labeled permanent removal, containing names of individuals who had disappeared from the system entirely. Download everything, Cole urged, his eyes fixed on the corridor outside. Elara inserted a data stick, initiating a transfer. This is worse than I imagined. They've been doing this for generations, refining the process each time. As the files transferred, Cole noticed a folder labeled Historical Air Quality. Curious, he pointed it out to Elara. Open that one, he suggested. Elara clicked on the folder, revealing hundreds of documents dating back to the city's founding. She opened the most recent first, which showed current atmospheric readings both inside and outside the city dome. That can't be right, she muttered, frowning at the screen. What? These readings... She clicked through several more recent files, her expression growing increasingly shocked. Cole, according to these measurements, the outside air has been breathable for nearly 30 years. Cole felt as if the floor had dropped away beneath him. What? That's impossible. The toxic atmosphere is why we're all trapped in here, why we need the lottery in the first place. Look for yourself, Elara said, turning the screen toward him. The data was clear. Outside oxygen levels had stabilized at breathable levels 3 decades ago, with toxin concentrations falling below dangerous thresholds. Yet another document showed the deliberate addition of toxins to the city's air supply, creating artificial scarcity. The whole system is a lie, Cole whispered, the enormity of the deception crashing over him. They're poisoning the air we breathe to maintain control. Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the building. The terminal screen flashed red, displaying unauthorized access detected. We need to go. Now. Cole grabbed the data stick, which had completed its transfer. They rushed from the control room, hearing the sound of security boots pounding in nearby corridors. Elara led them down a service passage, using her knowledge of the building layout to avoid the main response teams. "This way," she whispered, pulling Cole toward a maintenance elevator. "It goes directly to the lower levels." They had almost reached it when a spotlight caught them in its glare. "Stop immediately," commanded a familiar voice. Security Chief Hayes emerged from a side corridor, weapon drawn. "The mayor wants to speak with you both." Cole stepped in front of Elara protectively. "Run," he told her. "Get the data to someone who can use it." "I'm not leaving you," she insisted. Hayes approached slowly, his expression grim. "Ms. Vane, your father is very disappointed. And you, Davidson. I knew you were trouble from the first time I saw your name in the reports." "Did you know the outside air is breathable?" Cole challenged, hoping to buy time as he subtly passed the data stick to Elara. "Did you know the whole lottery is just a control mechanism?" A flicker of confusion crossed Hayes' face. "What nonsense is this?" "It's true," Elara added. "We found the proof. The air crisis ended decades ago, but the Council kept it secret to maintain power." "Lies," Hayes spat, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Why would we lie?" Cole pressed. "Check the environmental monitoring systems yourself if you don't believe us." Hayes' weapon wavered slightly. "Enough. You're both coming with me to see the mayor." "I don't think so," came another voice from behind Hayes. Marcus emerged from the shadows, wielding a heavy maintenance tool. Before Hayes could turn, Marcus struck him with enough force to send him crumpling to the floor, unconscious, but alive. "Marcus!" Cole exclaimed. "What are you doing here?" "Saving your stupid ass, apparently," Marcus replied, checking Hayes' pulse. "After you left, I started thinking about what you said, decided to follow and make sure you didn't get yourself killed." "We need to move," Elara urged, pushing the elevator call button. "Hayes will have backup on the way." The elevator arrived with a soft chime. The three of them piled in, Marcus dragging Hayes inside with them. "What are you doing?" Cole asked as Marcus propped the unconscious security chief against the wall. "Insurance," Marcus explained grimly. "They'll hesitate to shoot if we have him." Elara punched in a code, overriding the standard controls. "I'm sending us to sub-level 8. It's mostly abandoned maintenance areas. We can figure out our next move there." As the elevator descended, alarms continued to blare throughout the building. Marcus looked between Cole and Elara, his expression troubled. "Is it true?" he asked. "About the outside air?" Cole nodded, showing him the data stick. "All here. Environmental readings going back decades. The air crisis ended 30 years ago, but they kept it secret." Marcus shook his head in disbelief. "My whole life. Everyone's lives. For nothing?" "For control," Elara corrected bitterly. "My father and the Council use air to keep everyone in line, create artificial scarcity, and you create dependence." The elevator came to a stop, the doors opening onto a dimly lit corridor filled with abandoned equipment and dust. They dragged Hayes out, securing him to a pipe with his own restraints. "He'll be found eventually," Elara said, "but it buys us some time." "Time for what?" Marcus asked. "The entire security force will be looking for us." Cole paced the narrow space, his mind racing. "We need to get this information out to everyone. The whole city needs to know what's happening." "How?" Marcus challenged. "Every communication channel is monitored and controlled by the Council." Elara bit her lip, thinking. "There's the emergency broadcast system. It overrides all screens and speakers throughout the city. My father uses it for crisis announcements." "Can you access it?" Cole asked eagerly. "Maybe," she replied. "I know my father's authorization codes, but they'll have locked me out of the system by now." She glanced at Hayes, who was beginning to stir. "But we could use his biometrics." "He's not going to cooperate," Marcus pointed out. "He might," Cole said, approaching the groggy security chief, "especially if he sees the truth for himself." Hayes' eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on the three figures standing over him. He tested his restraints, then settled into a glare of cold fury. "You've signed your death warrants," he stated flatly. Cole knelt before him, holding up the data stick. "Before you threaten us anymore, I think you should see what's on this." Despite his situation, curiosity flickered in Hayes' eyes. More conspiracy theories? Facts, Cole corrected, nodding to Elara. She produced a small tablet from her jacket, inserting the data stick. For the next several minutes, they showed Hayes the damning evidence, the air quality readings, the lottery manipulation protocols, the list of removed citizens, including Cole's mother and Elara's father. Hayes's expression shifted gradually from skepticism to confusion to horror. "This can't be real," he finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. "It is," Elara insisted, "and I think part of you has suspected something wasn't right. Why else would the mayor keep the truth even from his chief of security?" Hayes was silent for a long moment. "The protocols come from the mayor's office directly. I've never questioned—" He looked up sharply. "If this is true, then I've been enforcing a lie my entire career." "Help us expose it," Cole urged. "Help us tell everyone." "They'll execute me along with you if I do," Hayes pointed out. "And if you don't," Marcus added, "you'll spend the rest of your life knowing you helped enslave an entire city for no reason." The security chief closed his eyes briefly, a man wrestling with the collapse of his worldview. When he opened them again, a new resolve had settled in his features. "The emergency broadcast system," he said slowly. "I can access it with my security clearance, but we'll need to reach the central communication hub, and it'll be heavily guarded by now." Elara released his restraints. "We'll figure it out together." Hayes rubbed his wrists, looking at each of them in turn. "If we do this, there's no going back. The Council won't surrender power easily, even when exposed." "We know," Cole said simply. Hayes nodded once, decision made. "There's a service tunnel that connects this sub-level to the central hub. Few people know about it. It was part of the original city design before the sectors were reorganized." "Lead the way," Cole said, extending a hand to help Hayes to his feet. The unlikely alliance moved through the abandoned sub-level, Hayes guiding them toward an unmarked door that opened onto a narrow, dusty passageway. As they traveled, Elara worked on the tablet, organizing the evidence into a clear, undeniable presentation. "The city needs more than just information," she said as they walked. "They'll need instructions. How to safely test the outside air. What to do when they realize they've been lied to." "There will be chaos," Hayes warned. 30 years of lies don't dissolve peacefully." "Better chaos with truth than order built on deception," Cole replied. After what seemed like hours of navigating the claustrophobic tunnel, they reached a sealed door with an ancient access panel. Hayes placed his palm on the scanner, then entered a complex code. "This brings us out inside the communication hub's maintenance area," he explained as the door creaked open. "From there, we can access the broadcast controls." The maintenance area was deserted, the regular staff likely pulled into the building-wide search. Hayes led them through a series of security checkpoints, his credentials still functioning despite the alert. "They haven't locked me out yet," he noted with grim satisfaction. "The mayor still trusts me." Finally, they reached the broadcast control room, a circular chamber filled with screens and control panels. At its center stood the main console, currently unmanned. "I can initiate an emergency broadcast from here," Hayes said, approaching the console. "But once I do, they'll know exactly where we are. We'll have minutes at most before security forces arrive." "How long do you need to upload all the evidence?" Cole asked Elara. She connected her tablet to the system. 3 minutes to upload, another minute to format for broadcast. Then it goes live to every screen in the city. "Do it," Cole decided. "Marcus and I will watch the doors." Hayes placed his hand on the console's scanner, then entered his authorization code. The system came to life, displays illuminating with official warning notices. "Emergency broadcast protocol initiated," announced a computerized voice. "Please state nature of emergency." "System integrity compromise," Hayes stated clearly. "Priority override Alpha 7. "Override accepted. Broadcast channel open in 3 minutes." Elara worked frantically at the console, uploading the damning files. Screens around the room showed the upload progress while others displayed security feeds from throughout the building. "We've got company," Marcus warned, watching one of the feeds. "Security teams converging from the main elevators." 2 minutes remaining, Elara reported, not looking up from her work. Cole moved to the main door, securing it with an emergency lock. This won't hold them for long. It doesn't have to, Hayes replied, monitoring another screen. Look, the mayor himself is coming. Sure enough, one feed showed Mayor Vane marching down a corridor, flanked by elite security officers. His face was a mask of cold fury. He knows exactly what we're doing, Elara said quietly. 1 minute, the computer announced. The sound of boots in the hallway grew louder. Cole and Marcus positioned themselves on either side of the door, prepared for the inevitable breach. Upload complete, Elara announced. Formatting for broadcast now. 30 seconds to live transmission, the computer confirmed. The pounding on the door began, heavy, rhythmic blows that made the metal buckle slightly with each impact. Step away from the console, came the mayor's voice through the door's communication system. This is your only warning. None of them moved. The console beeped, the screens around them flashing in unison. Broadcast ready, initiating citywide emergency transmission. The pounding on the door stopped abruptly. On the security feeds, they could see why. Every screen throughout the building had switched to the emergency broadcast symbol, briefly holding the city emblem before transitioning to the evidence they had prepared. Citizens of the city, Elara's recorded voice began, calm and authoritative. What you are about to see is the truth about our air, our lottery system, and the deception that has controlled our lives for generations. The door exploded inward, security forces flooding the room with weapons drawn. Mayor Vane stepped through the smoke, his face contorted with rage. "Shut it down," he shouted at the technicians who had followed him in. "Override the broadcast immediately." "It's too late," Hayes informed him, straightening to face his former superior. "The emergency protocol runs for a minimum of 15 minutes once initiated. The entire city is watching." The mayor turned to Hayes, betrayal and fury competing in his expression. "You too? My most loyal officer?" "Loyal to the city," Hayes corrected, "not to lies." Around them, the screens continued displaying the evidence, environmental readings showing breathable outside air, documents revealing the deliberate poisoning of the city's air supply, lists of citizens removed for discovering the truth. "You have no idea what you've done," the mayor snarled, addressing all of them but fixing his gaze on his stepdaughter. "The system maintains order. Without it, there will be chaos. Death." "There already has been death," Cole interrupted, stepping forward despite the weapons trained on him. "My mother, Elara's father, countless others, all sacrificed to maintain your control." Mayor Vane's composure cracked. "Your mother was a fool who believed my brother's insane theories." He turned to Elara. "Just as your father did. Neither understood the necessity of control." "Your brother?" Cole echoed, something clicking into place. "Victor Vane, the name in the records." A strange smile twisted the mayor's features. "Victor always was a bleeding heart. Thought people deserved freedom, as if freedom ever built anything lasting." He gestured sharply to his security team. "Take them to holding. When this broadcast ends, we'll announce that it was terrorist propaganda, designed to create panic." The officers moved to seize them, but hesitated as they glanced at the screen still displaying irrefutable evidence. One by one, they looked to Hayes instead of the mayor. "Sir," one of them said uncertainly, "is this true about the outside air?" "Don't be a fool," the mayor snapped. "Follow your orders." But the damage was done. The seeds of doubt had been planted, not just throughout the city, but within the mayor's own security force. Hayes stepped forward. "These readings are genuine. I've verified them myself. The outside air has been breathable for decades." Murmurs spread through the security team. The mayor's authority was visibly crumbling before their eyes. "Listen to me," the mayor said, his voice taking on a desperate edge. "The system protects us all. Without control, humans turn on each other. We've maintained peace, order, through fear and suffocation," Cole finished for him. "That's not peace. That's prison." The console beeped again. Emergency broadcast complete. Regular systems restored. For a moment, silence filled the room. Then reports began flooding in from throughout the city, crowds gathering in public spaces, citizens removing their masks in cautious experiments, demands for answers growing louder by the second. "It's over," Elara told her stepfather quietly. The truth is out. The mayor looked around the room, finding no allies among his formerly loyal forces. With surprising speed for his age, he lunged for Hayes's sidearm, wrenching it free and backing toward the door. "This isn't over," he declared, weapon raised. "When chaos engulfs the city, they'll beg for the return of order. My order—" Before anyone could move to stop him, he was gone, disappearing down the corridor with a small contingent of still loyal guards. "We need to go after him," Cole urged. "We will," Hayes agreed. "But first we need to address the city. People will be panicking, confused. They need guidance." Elara nodded, returning to the console. "I can open a live broadcast channel." As she worked, Cole's air gauge beeped a warning, down to 6 hours after the exertion of the night's events. The irony wasn't lost on him. Even as they exposed the lie of air scarcity, he was still bound by its reality until the city's systems could be reset. "Ready," Elara announced, activating the camera embedded in the console. "We're live to all sectors." Hayes stepped forward, his uniform lending authority to the moment. "Citizens of the city, this is Security Chief Hayes. By now, you've seen the evidence of the deception that has controlled our lives. I confirm that these documents are authentic. The outside air is breathable. The lottery system has been manipulated to maintain control, not to manage scarcity." He paused, then continued with remarkable steadiness. "I urge everyone to remain calm. Do not attempt to leave the city until proper exits can be secured. Those with symptoms of oxygen deprivation will still need medical attention. The air inside our city remains partially contaminated." Cole moved into the camera's view. "My name is Cole Davidson. My mother was killed for discovering this truth. Many of you saw me publicly punished for questioning the lottery. Now you know why." Elara joined them. "I am Elara Vane, daughter of Councilman James Parson, who was murdered for investigating air quality readings. Stepdaughter of Mayor Thaddeus Vane, who has maintained this deception for decades." Together, the three of them provided clear instructions: how citizens could safely test the outside air, which sectors had the most toxins to avoid, where to gather for further information. They emphasized the need for cooperation rather than panic, for community rather than chaos. As they finished the broadcast, Marcus approached Cole with a fresh air tank. "Borrowed from security supplies," he explained with a wry smile. "Figured you could use it." Cole accepted it gratefully, replacing his depleted tank. The gauge read 48 hours, a luxury he'd rarely experienced. "What now?" Marcus asked, looking between the three unlikely revolutionaries. "We find the mayor," Hayes stated firmly. "He's dangerous and desperate, and he mentioned Victor Vane, his brother, as if he might still be alive." "If Victor discovered the truth decades ago," Cole reasoned, "he might know more about the city's systems, how to safely transition everyone to clean air." "If he's alive," Elara added cautiously, "where has he been all this time?" Hayes consulted a terminal, reviewing security feeds from throughout the city. "The mayor is heading for the eastern sector. There's nothing there except—" "Except what?" Cole prompted. "The old emergency exits," Hayes finished, his expression troubled. "Sealed since the founding crisis. They lead directly outside." "He's running," Marcus concluded. "Or he's going to someone who's already outside," Elara suggested. "Victor?" Cole made the decision instantly. "We need to follow him. If Victor is alive, he could be crucial to safely transitioning the city. And we can't let the mayor escape accountability." Hayes nodded in agreement. "I'll assemble a team of officers I trust." "No," Cole countered. "A large group will slow us down and alert him to our pursuit. It should just be us." After a brief debate, Hayes conceded the point. The four of them, Cole, Elara, Marcus, and Hayes, gathered essential supplies from the security stores: communication devices, emergency rations, and light weapons for Hayes and Marcus. As they prepared to leave, the console lit up with incoming communications from throughout the city. Citizens were organizing, sharing information, distributing air supplies more equitably. The chaos the mayor had predicted was materializing instead as cooperation. "They don't need us to tell them what to do," Cole observed with a hint of pride. They just needed the truth. With a final check of their supplies, they set off toward the eastern sector, following the trail of a desperate man and the possibility of a brother who had been living with the truth for decades. Cole glanced at his gauge. 48 hours of air. For the first time in his life, that number represented not just survival, but possibility. Beyond the walls of the only home he'd ever known, the real future awaited. One built on truth rather than control, on abundance rather than artificial scarcity. As they moved through the corridors, citizens recognized them from the broadcast, reaching out with questions, gratitude, or simply to touch the people who had shattered their reality. Cole answered as best he could, but kept moving. There would be time for explanations later. Now, they had a mayor to catch and possibly a ghost to find. The eastern sector was largely abandoned, its corridors dusty and dimly lit. Unlike the maintained areas of the city, this section showed the true age of their enclosed world. Cracking walls, outdated technology, the skeletal framework of humanity's desperate retreat from what they believed was extinction. The emergency exits should be just ahead, Hayes said, consulting an ancient map he'd pulled from the security archives. They rounded a corner and found themselves facing a massive sealed door, its control panel dark with age. But it showed clear signs of recent activity, footprints in the dust, a power cable hastily connected to the ancient systems. "He's been here," Marcus confirmed, examining the improvised wiring. Recently, Hayes approached the control panel, studying its design. "This is original tech. My clearance won't work." "Look," Elara said, pointing to faint markings beside the door. "Someone's been coming and going for years. These scratches are old, but they form a pattern." Cole examined the marks, recognizing them as a primitive access code. "These aren't random. They're instructions." He traced the pattern with his finger, then entered the corresponding sequence on the keypad. To everyone's surprise, the ancient mechanism groaned to life. Warning lights flashed, and a computerized voice announced, "Emergency evacuation protocol initiated. Please secure breathing apparatus before exiting." The massive door began to slide open with the groan of metal that hadn't moved in decades. Beyond it lay a short corridor and another door, the final barrier between them and the outside world. "Wait," Hayes cautioned, drawing his weapon. "The mayor could be waiting on the other side." They proceeded cautiously through the corridor, reaching the outer door. This one had a simple manual release lever, recently oiled and maintained. Cole and Hayes positioned themselves on either side, while Marcus stood ready to pull the lever. Elara remained behind them, monitoring the corridor they'd come through. "Ready?" Marcus asked, hand on the lever. Cole nodded, tightening his grip on his air tank instinctively. Despite the evidence, years of conditioning made the thought of outside air terrifying. Marcus pulled the lever. The door swung outward with surprising ease, revealing not the toxic wasteland they'd been taught to fear, but a twilight landscape of recovering wilderness. Stunted trees and hardy shrubs stretched toward a sky painted with the colors of sunset. And there, standing in that impossible view, were two figures. Mayor Thaddeus Vane stood with his back to them, his breathing apparatus removed, facing an older man with wild white hair and weather-beaten skin. Despite the years and hardship evident in his appearance, the family resemblance was unmistakable. Victor Vane, the mayor's exiled brother, very much alive. "Can't stop it now," the mayor was saying, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. "The truth is out, but you were right, Victor. You were always right." Victor's response was lost as the group emerged from the doorway. Both men turned, Victor with surprise, the mayor with resignation. "So," Thaddeus said, making no move to flee or fight. "The heroes of the revolution have found us." Victor studied them with keen eyes that belied his wild appearance. "You're the ones who exposed the truth," he stated rather than asked. "After all these years," Cole stepped forward cautiously, his hand still on his breathing mask, though he hadn't activated it. The air felt strange against his skin, natural in a way the city's atmosphere never had been. "Victor Vane?" he asked. "You've been out here all this time?" The old man nodded. 35 years, banished for suggesting the unthinkable, that the air was healing, that we could gradually return to the surface. He cast a pointed look at his brother. Some found that truth too inconvenient for their ambitions. I did what was necessary, Thaddeus defended himself, though the conviction seemed to have drained from his voice. Human nature requires structure, control. Without it, we destroy ourselves. That wasn't your decision to make, Elara said, stepping forward to face her stepfather. Thousands have died to maintain your lie, including my father. Thaddeus didn't deny it. James was going to expose everything. The city wasn't ready. The city is ready now, Hayes stated firmly, and you will answer for your crimes. A bitter laugh escaped the mayor. Crimes? I preserved humanity when it would have torn itself apart. I maintained order when chaos threatened. History will vindicate me. No, Cole contradicted, finally lowering his hand from his mask as he took his first natural breath outside the city walls. The sensation was overwhelming, richer, fuller than anything he'd experienced. History will remember you as a tyrant who sacrificed others for power. Victor approached Cole, studying him with curious intensity. You look like her, he said quietly. Marion Davidson. She was one of my supporters before... My mother, Cole confirmed, emotion thickening his voice. She died giving me her air. Victor nodded solemnly. She believed, as I did, that people deserved the truth, that humans are capable of more than my brother gave them credit for. He gestured to the recovering landscape around them. Nature heals, given time. So do societies, if allowed to breathe freely. As the sun continued to set, casting long shadows across the unfamiliar terrain, they faced a critical decision. The mayor remained defiant, though defeated. Victor stood as living proof of the deception, and beyond the door, an entire city was awakening to freedom for the first time in generations. We need to go back, Cole decided, looking to the others. The city needs to see this for themselves, the living proof that we can survive outside. And him? Marcus asked, nodding toward the mayor. Hayes stepped forward, restraints in hand. Thaddeus Vane, you are under arrest for crimes against the citizens of this city. You will return with us to face judgment. The mayor offered no resistance as Hayes secured his wrists. His eyes remained fixed on his brother, decades of resentment and regret passing between them in that silent exchange. What about you? Elara asked Victor. Will you come back with us? The old man hesitated, looking at the crude shelter he'd built from city refuse, his home for 35 years. I'm not sure I belong in there anymore, he admitted. But perhaps it's time to finish what I started so long ago. As they prepared to return through the emergency exit, Cole took one last look at the twilight sky, the first he'd ever seen, but not the last. Tomorrow would bring unprecedented challenges as an entire population adjusted to the truth. Systems would need to be dismantled, toxins purged from the city's air, new governance established. But for the first time in generations, they would face those challenges breathing free air, making free choices, living free lives. The lottery was over. The drawing had come up in everyone's favor at last. Cole activated his comm unit, connecting to the broadcast system they'd left running in the communication hub. Citizens of the city, he began, his voice steady despite the emotion behind it. This is Cole Davidson. I'm standing outside our walls, breathing unfiltered air. He paused, looking at the unlikely group around him. Marcus, the reluctant revolutionary, Hayes, the converted enforcer, Elara, the truth-seeker, Victor, the vindicated exile, and Thaddeus, the fallen tyrant. We've found Mayor Vane, he continued, and someone else, Victor Vane, the mayor's brother, exiled 35 years ago for discovering the truth about the air. He's been living outside all this time, proving what our leaders denied. We can survive beyond our walls. He drew a deep breath of the sweet outside air. The transition won't be easy, but we'll face it together as free people making their own choices for the first time. The air we breathe from this day forward will be the air of truth. As the transmission ended, they began their journey back through the door, returning to guide a city, taking its first uncertain steps toward a future none of them had dared imagine. A future without tanks, without masks, without the artificial scarcity that had defined their existence. The lottery was over. The real drawing, the chance at genuine life, was just beginning. 2. The truth in the tanks. Elara Vane stood in her mother's private chambers, the evidence of her father's murder clutched in her trembling hands. Outside, the city was still processing the revelations from the emergency broadcast the night before. Security forces loyal to Hayes had taken control of the communication centers, but the mayor remained at large, his loyalists gathering in the upper levels. "You knew," Elara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "All these years you knew what he did to my father." Sophia Vane sat motionless by the window, her elegant posture a practiced facade that had become second nature over decades of survival. When she finally spoke, her voice carried the weight of long-suppressed grief. "I suspected," she corrected gently. "Knowing would have required proof. Proof I was too afraid to seek." "Why?" Elara demanded, anger flaring. "How could you marry him after what he did?" Sophia's eyes reflected years of carefully contained fear. "To protect you," she said simply. "Your father was investigating the air quality reports. When he disappeared, Thaddeus offered his protection for both of us." Her mouth twisted in a bitter smile. "It wasn't really an offer I could refuse." Elara paced the room, wrestling with this new understanding of her mother. Not the passive, decorative wife she'd always appeared to be, but a woman who had made a terrible bargain for her daughter's safety. "After your broadcast," Sophia continued, "Thaddeus came here before he fled. He was transformed. All that careful control, gone." She shuddered at the memory. "He said this was always how it would end, that his brother had predicted it decades ago." Elara stopped pacing. "Victor Vane," she breathed. "The records mentioned him. Thaddeus's brother who supposedly died in an air crisis." "Not died," Sophia corrected. "Exiled. Your father found references to him in old council records. That's what started his investigation." A sharp knock interrupted them. Elara tensed, but Sophia moved to the door with calm efficiency. "It's time," came Marcus's voice from the corridor. Elara turned to her mother. "We're going after the mayor. Will you be safe here?" Sophia's face softened with unexpected resolve. "I've survived 20 years as Thaddeus Vane's wife. I think I can manage a few hours without supervision." She embraced her daughter briefly. "Find the truth, Elara. All of it." Cole waited at the rendezvous point, a service junction in the mid-levels that offered discreet access to multiple sectors. His new air tank, courtesy of the security supplies, gave him a freedom of movement he'd rarely experienced. All around him the city was in upheaval, not the violent chaos the mayor had predicted, but a profound collective awakening. Citizens were organizing air distribution centers, sharing supplies freely. Some brave souls had begun testing the air near ventilation outlets, confirming what the broadcast had revealed. The toxins were concentrated, but diminishing as the system Cole and Marcus had sabotaged continued to fail. Hayes arrived first, now dressed in civilian clothing rather than his security uniform. "The mayor's loyalists have barricaded the upper council chamber," he reported without preamble. "But I've received reports he was seen heading east, toward the old sectors." "The emergency exits," Cole nodded. "Where is Victor supposedly living?" "If he's alive," Hayes cautioned. Marcus and Elara arrived moments later, completing their unlikely alliance. "My mother confirmed it," Elara told them as they gathered in a tight circle. "Victor was exiled, not killed, and she believes he's been outside the city walls all this time." "How would he survive?" Marcus asked skeptically. "Even if the air is breathable, What about food, water? We'll find out when we find him, Cole said firmly. Right now, our priority is reaching the eastern sector before the mayor does whatever he's planning. Hayes produced a schematic of the city on a small projection device. The direct routes will be watched. We'll need to use the maintenance tunnels. He traced a complex path through the three-dimensional model. It's longer, but safer. I know those tunnels, Marcus confirmed. We can do it. As they prepared to move out, Cole noticed Elara checking a small device attached to her wrist. What is that? Air quality sensor, she explained. High precision model from my father's lab. It'll give us accurate readings when we go outside. When, not if. The subtle correction revealed her determination and her hope. Let's move, Hayes ordered, taking point as they entered the dimly lit maintenance tunnel. The journey through the city's hidden arteries was arduous. The tunnels were designed for utility, not comfort, narrow in places, with unexpected drops and climbs as they navigated between levels. After 2 hours of travel, they paused at a junction to rest and check their bearings. We're approaching the boundary of the inhabited zones, Hayes announced, consulting his map. Beyond this point, city services are minimal. Most systems were shut down decades ago to conserve resources, or to prevent people from wandering too close to the truth, Cole added darkly. As they rested, drinking from their water rations, Elara approached Cole. There's something I've been meaning to ask you, she said quietly. Your mother, the record said she was connected to Victor Vane's inquiries. Do you know anything about that? Cole shook his head slowly. She never spoke about it directly. I was only 7 when she died. He paused, remembering. But she used to tell me stories about the outside, what it was like before the crisis. She described the sky in such detail, as if she remembered it personally. How old would she have been during the founding crisis? Elara asked. Cole calculated quickly. Maybe 5 or 6, young enough that she shouldn't have had clear memories of outside. The implication hung between them. You think she might have been outside after that? With Victor? It's possible, Elara suggested, if Victor discovered the truth and was building support. Their theorizing was interrupted by a distant rumble that shook dust from the tunnel ceiling. What was that? Marcus asked, instantly alert. Hayes frowned, listening. Sounds like a security door activating. Heavy-duty model. The emergency exit? Cole suggested. Possibly. We need to move. Now. They hurried through the final stretch of tunnels, the path growing increasingly dilapidated. Ancient signs warned of restricted areas and emergency protocols, their faded lettering a reminder of the city's earliest days. Finally, they emerged into a vast chamber that must have once served as a staging area for large equipment. Thick layers of dust covered everything, except a narrow path of footprints leading to a massive circular door at the far end. Someone's been here recently, Marcus observed, examining the disturbed dust. Multiple times from the look of it. The mayor? Cole suggested. Hayes knelt to study the prints more carefully. Different patterns. At least 2 people. Maybe 3. Victor, Elara breathed. And someone else? Another exile? They followed the footprints to the massive door. Unlike the maintained sections of the city, this area showed its age plainly. Corroded metal, failed lighting systems, the infrastructure of a civilization that had expected its retreat to be temporary. The control panel beside the door showed signs of makeshift repairs, jury-rigged wiring and replacement parts that didn't quite match the original design. Someone's been maintaining this, Marcus said with professional appreciation, keeping it operational when the rest of the sector was abandoned. Can you open it? Cole asked. Marcus examined the panel, tracing the modifications with practiced fingers. It's been reconfigured, but the basic mechanism is standard. I think so. Before he could begin, however, a voice echoed from the shadows behind them. I wouldn't do that if I were you. They spun around, Hayes drawing his weapon in one fluid motion. From behind a massive piece of abandoned machinery stepped a tall, gaunt man in his 60s, his gray hair cropped military short, his bearing unmistakably that of security training. "Brenner," Hayes said, recognition and surprise mingling in his voice. "I thought you were dead." The man, Brenner, smiled thinly. That was the official story. More accurate to say I was reassigned. "You know him?" Cole asked Hayes, not lowering his guard. "Former security chief," Hayes explained, his weapon still trained on the man. "Disappeared 5 years ago during a supposed air system malfunction in Sector 4. Not disappeared," Brenner corrected. "Relocated. The mayor needed someone to monitor this exit after the previous guard grew unreliable." "You've been guarding Victor Vane," Elara deduced. Brenner's eyes narrowed as he assessed her. "The mayor's stepdaughter. Yes, I see the resemblance to your father." He shifted his attention to the group as a whole. "Victor Vane is none of your concern. The mayor has gone to deal with him personally." "Deal with him?" Cole challenged. "You mean kill him, just like he killed my mother and Elara's father?" Something flickered in Brenner's expression. Doubt, perhaps. "I follow orders. The stability of the city depends on it." "The city is already changing," Hayes told him. "The truth is out. People know the air crisis ended decades ago." Brenner's composure slipped momentarily. "Impossible. The broadcast systems are secured." "Not against the emergency protocols," Elara interrupted. "Every citizen knows everything now." Uncertainty crept across Brenner's features. If that's true, then the mayor's final protocol is even more necessary. "Final protocol?" Hayes demanded, stepping forward. "What is Thaddeus planning?" Instead of answering, Brenner lunged suddenly toward a small console concealed behind a support column. Hayes fired, but too late. Brenner's hand slammed down on a sequence of buttons before he crumpled to the floor. Hayes's shot, having found its mark in his shoulder. Alarms blared throughout the chamber, red emergency lights flashing as a computerized voice announced, "Containment breach protocol initiated. Sector sealing in 60 seconds. "He's triggered a lockdown," Marcus shouted over the alarms. "We'll be trapped." Hayes hurried to the fallen Brenner, pressing his weapon against the man's chest. "Override it. Now." Blood seeping through his fingers as he clutched his wounded shoulder, Brenner smiled grimly. "Can't. Only the mayor can reverse a containment breach protocol. Standard security measure." 45 seconds to sector sealing, the computerized voice continued implacably. Cole rushed to the door they'd been about to open. "We need to get through now." Marcus joined him at the control panel, working frantically to decode the modified system. "I need time." "We don't have time," Elara shouted as massive blast doors began to descend at the chamber's entrance, cutting off their retreat. 30 seconds to sector sealing." Hayes dragged the wounded Brenner toward them. "What's on the other side of this door? Tell me." "Airlock," Brenner gasped through pain. "Then, outside." "The code, Brenner," Hayes demanded. "Give me the override." The former security chief's eyes hardened. The mayor's orders were clear. No one follows him. Elara knelt beside the wounded man, her voice cutting through his conditioning with unexpected authority. "Your duty is to the city's people, not to one man's obsession with control. If you don't help us, thousands may die when the air systems completely fail." 20 seconds to sector sealing. Brenner's resolve visibly wavered. "Victor's code," he finally said. "The door recognizes his pattern. 7-2-2-1-8-9. Marcus immediately input the sequence. The massive door shuddered, ancient mechanisms grinding to life. 10 seconds to sector sealing. The door began to slide open with excruciating slowness, revealing an airlock chamber beyond. 5 seconds. "Go!" Hayes shouted, pushing Cole and Elara toward the narrowing gap between the blast doors descending from the ceiling. They squeezed through, Marcus following immediately after. Hayes dragged the wounded Brenner with him, barely making it through before the blast doors slammed shut with a decisive thud. The airlock was small and utilitarian, designed for maintenance crews rather than mass evacuation. A second door, the final barrier between them and the outside world, waited at the opposite end. "What about the containment protocol?" Cole asked, catching his breath. "Will it seal this door too?" No, Brenner answered weakly as Hayes applied a pressure bandage to his wound. This section is considered already compromised. One-way security only. Elara checked her air quality sensor, her face illuminated by its soft blue glow. Toxin levels decreasing, she reported. The air system shutdown is working. The poisons are dissipating. Not fast enough for the lower levels, Hayes pointed out grimly. Without functioning air processing, some sectors will become critical within hours. The gravity of their situation settled over them. The city's life support systems were failing. The mayor was pursuing some final protocol that couldn't be good, and they were trapped in an airlock with no way back. We have to continue forward, Cole decided. Find the mayor and Victor, stop whatever's happening, and bring back proof that the outside is safe. No one objected. Even Brenner seemed resigned to the new reality. Marcus examined the outer door mechanism. This one's simpler. Manual override only. He pointed to a large lever beside the door. Once we pull that, there's no going back until someone opens it from this side. They exchanged glances, the magnitude of the moment not lost on any of them. This was what Victor had discovered decades ago, what Cole's mother had died for, what Elara's father had been murdered to conceal. Beyond this final barrier lay the truth and their future. Check your breathing apparatus, Hayes instructed, professional to the end. We don't know exactly what we'll encounter. They verified their equipment, each lost in private thoughts about what awaited them. Cole found himself fingering his mother's old mask, still carried in his pocket as a talisman. Ready? Marcus asked, hand on the lever. Cole nodded, as did the others. With a deep breath, Marcus pulled the lever downward. The door unlocked with a series of mechanical clicks, then slowly swung outward on massive hinges. Fading daylight spilled into the airlock, casting long shadows behind them, their first glimpse of natural light in their lives. Wait, Brenner called weakly from where he sat propped against the wall. The outside air, it's supposed to be toxic. Fatal. Within minutes. That's what they told us, Cole agreed. Let's find out the truth. He stepped forward, crossing the threshold with Elara beside him. Hayes followed, his weapon ready, while Marcus helped the injured Brenner to his feet and supported him across the boundary. Outside, the world opened before them in breathtaking vastness. Unlike the enclosed confines of the city, there were no walls here, no ceiling. Just open space stretching to a horizon none of them had ever seen, except in historical images. The sky burned with the colors of sunset, clouds painted in impossible hues of orange and pink. But more shocking than the vista was what they saw directly ahead, a crude shelter constructed from city refuse, surrounded by simple containers growing plants. And beyond that, two figures standing in confrontation. Mayor Elara Vane and an older man with wild white hair and weathered skin who could only be Victor Vane. Neither man had noticed their emergence from the airlock, so intent were they on their confrontation. Should have killed you decades ago, the mayor was saying, his voice carrying clearly in the still air. It would have been cleaner than exile. But not as satisfying, Victor replied, his voice strong despite his obvious age. You needed me alive, but discredited. The crazy brother who claimed the air was safe. It wasn't safe then, the mayor snapped. The readings were inconsistent, unreliable. They were trending toward recovery, and you knew it, Victor countered calmly. But you also saw the potential for control. Why relinquish power when you could extend it indefinitely? The mayor's face contorted with anger. You never understood the necessity of order. Humans need structure, control. Without it, they might learn to govern themselves. Victor finished for him. Make their own choices, breathe free air. Look around you. Thaddeus gestured sharply at the stunted vegetation and damaged landscape. This is what freedom brought humanity: destruction, waste, collapse. And yet it heals, Victor said simply, as would society, if given the chance. Throughout this exchange, none of them had activated their breathing apparatus. Cole realized with a start that he was standing in the open air, the supposedly toxic atmosphere, and breathing normally. The sensation was indescribable, richer, fuller, unperfumed by the chemical processing of the city systems. Elara checked her sensor, eyes widening. "The air, it's clean," she whispered. "Oxygen levels normal, toxins minimal. It's actually better than inside the city." The sound of her voice finally alerted the two brothers to their presence. Both turned, shock registering on Thaddeus's face while Victor appeared merely curious. "You!" the mayor snarled, recognizing Cole and Elara from the broadcast. His gaze hardened further when he spotted Hayes. "Traitors, all of you." "It's over, Thaddeus," Hayes stated firmly. "The truth is out. The city knows everything." "Not everything," the mayor replied, a strange smile twisting his features. "Not about Protocol Zero." Victor's expression changed instantly from curiosity to alarm. "You didn't," he breathed. "What is Protocol Zero?" Cole demanded, stepping forward. The mayor's smile widened. "The final contingency. If control is lost, if the system is compromised, maximum toxin release to all sectors. Currently underway." He checked his timepiece with theatrical precision. "The lower levels should be experiencing the effects already." Horror spread through the group as the implication became clear. The mayor had programmed the failing air systems to release all remaining toxins at once. A final, spiteful demonstration of his power. "You've killed thousands," Elara accused, her voice shaking with rage. "I've maintained order until the end," the mayor countered calmly. "When the survivors emerge, they'll rebuild the system." Humans always do. Marcus had been examining the mayor carefully during this exchange. "He's bluffing," he announced suddenly. "The air systems are failing. They can't distribute toxins if they're shutting down." "The emergency reserves," Hayes realized aloud. "Sealed canisters in each sector, designed to release if the main systems fail." Victor nodded grimly. "Part of the original crisis protocol, meant to purify areas in case of contamination. Thaddeus repurposed them years ago." Cole turned to Marcus urgently. "Can they be stopped?" The maintenance worker's face was grim. "Not from here. We'd need access to the central environmental controls." "Which are locked down," the mayor added with satisfaction. "As I said, Protocol Zero cannot be countermanded." Victor had been quietly assessing the situation. Now he spoke, addressing Cole directly. "There's a manual override in the original control room, the one they built before the main operations center. It still connects to all systems." "Where?" Hayes demanded. "Level B3, Section 12, behind the current air processing center. They sealed it off decades ago, but the connections remain." The mayor laughed. "And you think you can reach it in time? The city is in chaos. The tunnels are sealed, and the toxins are already releasing." Elara stepped forward, facing her stepfather with cold fury. "You're coming with us. Your biometrics will open any sealed sections." For the first time, uncertainty flickered in the mayor's expression. "I have no intention of—" Hayes pressed his weapon against the mayor's chest. "This isn't a negotiation." Cole turned to Victor. "Will you come with us? We need your knowledge of the old systems." The exile studied him thoughtfully. "You're Marion's son, aren't you?" "I see her in your face." At Cole's nod, he continued. "She believed people deserved the chance to breathe free air, to choose their own path." "And now they have that chance," Cole replied. "If we move quickly enough." Victor cast a long look at the shelter that had been his home for decades, then at the horizon where the last light of day was fading. 35 years I've waited for this moment," he said quietly. "Let's not waste another minute." The return journey through the airlock was tense and urgent. Hayes kept his weapon trained on the mayor, while Marcus supported both the injured Brenner and the elderly Victor. The former exile moved with surprising vigor for his age, his eyes alert and calculating as he reacquainted himself with the city's infrastructure. "The blast doors are still sealed," Cole observed as they reached the inner airlock door. "Containment override. the mayor stated flatly when Hayes pressed the weapon more firmly against him. Panel to the right of the door. Full palm authentication required. Hayes gestured for him to proceed. With obvious reluctance, Thaddeus pressed his palm to the scanner. After a moment's verification, the mechanism hummed to life, and the massive blast doors began to retract. "The tunnels will be the fastest route," Victor advised as they re-entered the chamber. "If they haven't changed the layout too drastically since my departure." "The basic infrastructure remains the same," Hayes confirmed. "But we'll need to avoid security checkpoints. The mayor's loyalists will be looking for him, and us." They moved swiftly through the abandoned sector, Victor occasionally pausing to orient himself as decades-old memories aligned with present reality. Despite his years of exile, he navigated the city's forgotten paths with increasing confidence. "Your mother was one of the first to believe me," Victor told Cole as they descended a rarely used maintenance ladder. "She was a junior environmental technician, had access to the raw data before it was adjusted for official reports." "How did she survive the initial purge?" Cole asked, hungry for any information about his mother's hidden past. "She didn't openly support me," Victor explained. "Worked behind the scenes, gathered evidence. After my exile, she went underground with her research. Must have stayed hidden until she had me," Cole finished quietly. "And couldn't stay hidden with a child." Victor nodded solemnly. "The system doesn't accommodate outliers, especially those with children." Their conversation was interrupted as they reached a junction where the tunnels had partially collapsed. Marcus examined the damage with professional concern. "Recent," he determined, "and deliberate. Someone blasted these supports." "My security detail," the mayor offered without prompting. "Standard protocol when pursuing fugitives. Limit their escape routes." Hayes consulted his mental map of the tunnels. "We'll need to go up one level, cross to the central shaft, then descend again." As they changed course, Elara helped Victor climb over a particularly challenging section of debris. "You mentioned the original control room," she said. "Why would it still connect to current systems?" "Redundancy," Victor explained. "The founders were thorough. Built backup connections for everything, designed the environmental systems to function even if the main controls were compromised. They were planning for recovery, you see. Always believed the retreat would be temporary. Until my father and the council decided permanent control was preferable to temporary safety," Elara concluded bitterly. "Your birth father was one of the good ones," Victor told her kindly. "James Parson recognized the patterns in the data, came to me in secret before I was exiled." Elara's breath caught. "You knew him?" "Briefly. He was young, idealistic, believed in transparency." Victor cast a dark glance at his brother, exactly the type Thaddeus couldn't tolerate in his ordered world. The mayor remained stonily silent as they continued their journey. Brenner's condition was deteriorating, his breathing becoming labored, the makeshift bandage soaked through. "He needs medical attention," Hayes observed clinically. "The original control room had a first aid station," Victor recalled. "If it hasn't been stripped bare." They pressed on through the city's hidden arterial network, the urgency of their mission growing with each passing minute. Occasionally, they would pass ventilation outlets where they could hear the distant sounds of the city above. Voices calling for help. Alarms blaring. The chaotic symphony of a society in transformation. After what seemed like hours, but was perhaps only 40 minutes, Victor stopped at an unremarkable section of wall. "Here," he announced, running his fingers along what appeared to be a solid surface. "This access was concealed when they built the new control center." Marcus examined the wall skeptically. "I don't see any door." Victor smiled faintly. That was rather the point. His fingers found an invisible seam, pressing in a specific sequence. To everyone's surprise, a section of the wall slid sideways, revealing a narrow passage beyond. "Maintenance chiefs know most of the city's secrets," Victor explained with a hint of pride. "But not all of them." The passage led to a small room filled with antiquated equipment, the original environmental control center from the city's founding days. Dust covered every surface, but soft indicator lights showed that some systems remained operational, connected to the current infrastructure as Victor had claimed. "Set Brenner there," Victor directed, pointing to an old medical cot in the corner. As Hayes and Marcus helped the wounded man lie down, Victor moved directly to the main console, his fingers hovering over the controls with reverent familiarity. "The emergency purge system," he murmured, studying the displays. "Still connected to the main grid. Thaddeus didn't remove the override capability, just hid it where no one would think to look." The mayor, still at gunpoint, watched his brother with cold calculation. "You can't stop it, Victor." The release sequence is already initiated in the lower levels. By now, sectors 7 through 12 are experiencing maximum concentration. Cole felt his blood run cold. "That's where Marcus and I live. Thousands of people." "Can still be saved," Victor insisted, his fingers dancing across the ancient controls with surprising dexterity. "If we purge the toxins and redirect emergency oxygen reserves." "That's impossible," the mayor scoffed. "The reserves are locked by council authorization." Victor looked up from the console, a hint of his old authority returning to his weathered features. "You forget, brother. I helped design these systems. The founders built in safeguards against exactly the kind of manipulation you perfected." He pressed a sequence of keys, then placed his palm on a dusty scanner plate. To everyone's astonishment, the system recognized him after 35 years, the display flashing. "Vane, Victor, Environmental Chief, authorization confirmed." "How?" the mayor began, genuine surprise breaking through his composed facade. "Dead men don't get removed from the original systems," Victor explained with grim satisfaction. "Another oversight in your perfect control." The ancient screens displayed a city-wide schematic, highlighting affected areas in alarming red. Nearly a third of the map was already illuminated, the contamination spreading rapidly through the lower sectors. "We need to vent those sections immediately," Victor instructed, "and redirect oxygen from the council reserves to the affected areas." Cole moved to assist him, following directions as Victor called them out. Elara monitored the toxin distribution patterns while Marcus examined the physical connections between this forgotten room and the current systems. "The main vents in sectors 7 through 9 are sealed," Elara reported, concern etching her features. "Manual override," Victor responded without looking up from his work. "Someone needs to physically open the master vents in the central hub." "I know where they are," Marcus volunteered immediately. "I've worked maintenance on those systems." Hayes made a quick decision. "Take the mayor with you. His authorization will get you through any security checkpoints. I'll stay here with Brenner and help coordinate." Cole hesitated, torn between helping Victor with the complex override sequences and accompanying Marcus to ensure the mayor didn't attempt escape. "Go," Victor told him, sensing his conflict. "I need Elara here. Her technical knowledge of the current systems complements my historical understanding. You're needed at the vents." Decision made, Cole joined Marcus. Hayes handed Marcus his weapon, providing terse instructions on how to use it if necessary. The mayor's expression remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed calculation, always searching for advantage. "The northeast access tunnel will take you directly to the central hub," Victor advised. "It should be clear of security. It was an unauthorized route even in my day." With a nod of acknowledgement, Cole and Marcus escorted the mayor into the narrow service tunnel, beginning their race against time to save the citizens of the lower levels. The journey to the central hub was tense and silent. The mayor offered no resistance but made no effort to hide his contempt for their mission. Occasionally they would pass ventilation outlets where the effects of the toxin release were audible. Coughing, alarms, panicked voices. "You're destroying decades of stability," the mayor finally said as they approached the central hub. "For what? A chaotic freedom that will collapse within months?" "For truth," Cole replied simply, "and the right to choose our own future." "Choice is an illusion," the mayor countered. "Humans choose self-destruction when left to their own devices. The lottery maintained order, purpose. Marcus, who had remained characteristically practical throughout, finally broke his silence. I believed that once, that the system, however unfair, was necessary. He glanced at Cole. Some of us had to see the evidence with our own eyes, breathe the outside air with our own lungs, before we could accept the truth. They reached the central hub, an enormous cylindrical chamber where the city's primary ventilation systems converged. Under normal operations, this area would be staffed with maintenance personnel, but the current crisis had left it abandoned, as workers either fled to safety or rushed to help in affected areas. "The master vent controls are on the upper catwalk," Marcus directed, pointing to a metal walkway that circled the chamber 20 meters above. As they climbed the access ladder, the mayor suddenly stopped. "You realize that opening these vents will create a direct pathway for outside air to enter the city unfiltered?" "That's the point," Cole replied, urging him to continue climbing. "The outside air is cleaner than what you've been pumping into the lower levels for years." "And if I'm right," the mayor challenged, "if the toxin concentrations outside have temporarily abated but return, you'll have killed everyone." "We've been outside," Marcus reminded him firmly. "We've breathed that air. Victor has lived in it for 35 years. They reached the catwalk, the vast chamber stretching below them. Marcus immediately identified the master control panel, moving toward it with practiced efficiency. "I need his palm authorization," Marcus called to Cole, who kept his weapon trained on the mayor. With obvious reluctance, Thaddeus placed his hand on the scanner. The panel illuminated, displaying critical warnings about atmospheric contamination throughout the lower sectors. "These readings are catastrophic," Marcus muttered as he worked. They released everything they had. Cole's comm unit activated, Elara's voice coming through with electronic distortion. "Cole, we've managed to override the council reserves. Emergency oxygen is being redirected to the affected sectors. Have you reached the vents?" "Working on it now," Cole confirmed. "How bad is it?" "Critical in sectors 7 through 10, she replied grimly. "Victor says we have minutes, not hours, before permanent damage occurs." Marcus was already initiating the emergency purge sequence. "Once I open these vents, the contaminated air will be sucked out and replaced by whatever is outside. The pressure differential will create powerful air currents throughout the affected sectors. Everyone needs to secure themselves to something solid," Cole relayed to Elara. "The purge will create strong winds inside the city." As Marcus completed the final sequence, alarms blared throughout the hub. "Emergency atmospheric venting initiated," announced an automated voice. "All personnel clear affected areas immediately." The enormous vent covers began to retract with the groan of machinery that hadn't been activated in decades. Below them, the main shaft that connected to the outside world opened, creating an immediate rush of air as higher pressure inside the city sought equilibrium with the external atmosphere. "It's working!" Marcus shouted over the howling wind. "The toxins are being purged!" Cole held tightly to the catwalk railing, the powerful air current threatening to sweep them off their feet. The mayor, momentarily forgotten in the crisis, saw his opportunity. With a sudden lunge, he broke free of Cole's grip and ran along the catwalk toward an emergency exit. "He's escaping!" Cole shouted to Marcus, who was fully occupied keeping the vent systems functioning. "Let him go," Marcus called back. "This is more important." But Cole couldn't let the architect of so much suffering simply walk away. He pursued the mayor along the swaying catwalk, the wind making each step treacherous. Thaddeus reached the emergency exit, inputting an access code with practiced precision. The door slid open, revealing a separate chamber beyond. One of the mayor's personal escape routes, no doubt. "It's over, Thaddeus!" Cole shouted above the roaring wind. "There's nowhere left to run!" The mayor turned, his face a mask of cold fury. "This isn't over. It's merely beginning. You've released a disease called freedom, and when it proves terminal, I'll be waiting." Before Cole could reach him, another figure emerged from the emergency exit. Elara Vane, somehow having anticipated his brother's escape route. "Hello, Thaddeus," Victor said calmly, despite the chaos around them. "I believe we have unfinished business." The mayor's composure finally cracked. "You? How did you—" "I built this city alongside you," Victor reminded him. Did you really think I wouldn't know every escape route you built for yourself? Momentarily distracted by his brother's appearance, the mayor didn't notice Cole closing the distance between them. In a swift motion, Cole tackled him, both men crashing to the catwalk floor as the wind continued to howl around them. "This is for my mother," Cole growled, pinning the struggling mayor, "and for everyone else who died for your lies." Victor approached calmly, producing restraints that he must have taken from Hayes. "Enough blood has been spilled," he told Cole gently. "He'll face justice from the people he deceived, not vengeance from those he hurt." Cole's grip loosened gradually as wisdom overcame rage. He allowed Victor to secure the mayor's wrists, then helped haul Thaddeus to his feet. "Your revolution will collapse," the mayor spat, his composure shattered. "Humans need control. They crave it." "No," Victor countered. "They crave truth, purpose, and genuine connection, all things your system denied them." The comm unit crackled to life, Elara's voice breaking through the static. "Cole, Marcus, the purge is working. Toxin levels are dropping throughout the affected sectors." "And the outside air?" Cole asked, already knowing the answer from his own unassisted breathing. "Clean," she confirmed. "Perfectly breathable. Reports are coming in from all sectors. People are testing it themselves, spreading the word." Marcus joined them, the vent systems now functioning autonomously. "The city's atmosphere should equalize with outside within hours," he reported. "Decades of poisoning, undone in a single day." As if to underscore his point, the howling wind began to subside, the pressure differential diminishing as the city's artificial atmosphere merged with the natural world beyond its walls. Victor gazed upward, toward the enormous central vent where stars were now visible in the night sky above. "I've waited 35 years to see those stars from inside these walls again," he said softly. The four men made their way carefully back to the access ladder, the mayor a defeated figure between his brother and the son of a woman who had died for the truth. As they descended, they could hear new sounds echoing through the ventilation system. Not panic or alarm, but calls of amazement, even celebration. "They're discovering the air," Cole realized, just as we did. By the time they returned to the original control room, the city's transformation was well underway. Hayes had established communication with loyal security forces throughout the sectors, coordinating an orderly transition. Brenner had been stabilized and was providing valuable information about the mayor's secret protocols and hidden loyalists. Elara embraced Cole when he entered, relief evident in her face. "It worked," she told him. "All sectors are reporting decreasing toxin levels. The worst affected are receiving emergency oxygen from the council reserves." "And casualties?" Cole asked, dreading the answer. Her expression sobered. "Dozens confirmed in the lowest sectors. Hundreds suffering exposure effects. But without your action, it would have been thousands." Victor had immediately returned to the control systems, working alongside Elara to monitor the atmospheric transition. His expertise with the original systems proved invaluable as they managed the delicate process of integrating outside air without creating dangerous turbulence in populated areas. The mayor sat in silence, watched over by Hayes, his defeat complete as reports continued to flow in from throughout the city. Sectors declaring themselves free of toxins, citizens experiencing unfiltered air for the first time, improvised celebrations breaking out as the truth of their liberation spread. "We should address the city," Hayes suggested as the situation stabilized. "People need guidance, explanation." "Not from me," Cole demurred. "I'm just the messenger." "You're more than that," Victor corrected, looking up from the console. "You're a symbol now. The man who questioned the lottery and discovered the truth." "We all did it together," Cole insisted, looking around at their unlikely alliance. An elite stepdaughter, a practical maintenance worker, a converted security chief, and an exiled engineer. "Then we'll speak together," Elara decided. "But first, there's something you should see." She led them to a small viewport in the control room wall that Cole hadn't noticed before. It offered a direct line of sight to one of the city's main plazas, visible despite the late hour due to emergency lighting. The scene below was extraordinary. Citizens had gathered spontaneously, many without breathing apparatus, experiencing their first taste of unfiltered air. Some were embracing, others sitting in quiet wonder. Children ran freely, unencumbered by the tanks and masks that had defined their existence. And above them all, visible through the now open central vents, spread a canopy of stars most had never seen before. "That," Victor said quietly, "is why I never gave up. All those years outside, watching and waiting, it was for this moment." "What happens now?" Marcus asked, the practical question hanging in the air. "Transition," Hayes answered professionally. "Security protocols reconfigured for public safety rather than control. Air systems permanently deactivated or converted to filter rather than poison." "And the walls?" Cole pressed. "Do they come down?" Victor considered this thoughtfully. "Not immediately. The outside world has dangers of its own. Weather, predators, the challenges of a recovering ecosystem. People need time to adapt, learn, prepare. But they come down eventually," Elara insisted. Not a question, but a statement of principle. "Yes," Victor agreed, "when we're ready to truly rejoin the world." The mayor stirred from his silence. "You're all fools," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "The outside is uncontrolled, unpredictable." "Like life itself," Victor replied simply. Hayes activated the communication system that would broadcast to all sectors still receiving emergency announcements. "Citizens of the city," he began formally, "the air crisis has been contained. Toxin levels are decreasing in all sectors. Emergency oxygen is being distributed to affected areas." He passed the microphone to Elara, who continued with calm authority. "The transition to natural atmosphere is proceeding safely. Those experiencing breathing difficulties should seek medical attention at emergency stations established in all major plazas." Marcus took his turn. "All maintenance personnel. The central ventilation systems have been reconfigured for air exchange rather than filtration. Your assistance is needed to maximize flow to previously restricted areas." When the microphone came to Cole, he paused, searching for words adequate to the moment. To everyone who questioned the lottery, who suspected the truth, who kept hope alive, your instincts were right. The air outside our walls is clean, breathable, and has been for decades. Finally, Victor spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 35 years of exile and vindication. "I am Victor Vane, former environmental chief, declared dead by the council 35 years ago for discovering that the air crisis was ending. I have lived outside our walls all this time, breathing free air. The truth has been buried for generations, but it cannot be contained any longer." As their broadcast concluded, a new sound began to echo through the city's communication systems. Spontaneous cheering from sector after sector as the full impact of their words registered. The lottery was over. The drawing that had determined life and death for generations was revealed as the control mechanism it had always been. In the plaza visible through the viewport, citizens were looking upward, toward the stars now visible through the central vents. Some were pointing, others embracing. A few had already begun painting over the propaganda that had adorned the walls for decades. "It will be chaotic," the mayor warned from his seat, a final attempt to vindicate his philosophy. "Disorder always follows freedom." "Perhaps," Victor acknowledged, turning from the viewport to face his brother. "But it will be honest chaos, freely chosen and openly faced, not the controlled, hidden suffering you engineered." Cole stood at the threshold of a new era, acutely aware of the challenges ahead. Rebuilding governance, establishing new systems based on truth rather than manipulation, helping citizens adjust to realities many would struggle to accept. The work would be monumental. But as he watched the celebrations spreading throughout the city, as he breathed air that flowed freely from outside for the first time in his life, a sense of possibility replaced the constant anxiety that had defined his existence. His mother's sacrifice had not been in vain. The truth she had died for was finally free. "Come," Victor said, placing a weathered hand on Cole's shoulder. "There's much to do. A city to rebuild. A world to rediscover." Together they left the original control room, heading toward the plaza where citizens gathered in growing numbers. The mayor followed under Hayes's guard, a living reminder of the system being dismantled. Marcus and Elara walked ahead, already discussing practical aspects of the transition. As they emerged into the plaza, a hush fell over the gathered citizens. Many recognized Cole and Elara from the broadcast. Others identified Hayes by his uniform. But it was Victor who drew the most attention. The man declared dead decades ago, now returned as living proof of the deception. "The air is clean," Cole announced simply to the assembled crowd. "The outside world awaits us when we're ready." A woman stepped forward, her face etched with the hardship of lower-level life. "What about the lottery? What happens now?" "There is no more lottery," Victor replied. "No more artificial scarcity. No more control through fear." "But how will we distribute resources?" called another voice from the crowd. "Together," Elara answered. "Transparently. Equally." The questions continued as dawn approached, the first natural sunrise many would ever witness. Cole found himself standing slightly apart, watching as Victor, Elara, Hayes, and even Marcus addressed the crowd's concerns with patience and honesty. His gaze drifted upward to where the stars were beginning to fade in the lightening sky. Somewhere in that expanse, he felt his mother's presence, her sacrifice finally fulfilled, her truth finally known. The lottery had ended. The drawing for life and death was over. Now began the true challenge, learning to live with the freedom of choice, the burden of knowledge, and the responsibility of truth. As the first rays of sunrise illuminated the city, Cole knew that, despite the enormity of the task ahead, one fundamental reality had changed forever. They would face it breathing free air, making free choices, living free lives. The truth in the tanks had finally been revealed. They had never been necessary at all. 3. The open sky. Dawn broke over the city for the first time in generations, not the artificial illumination that had mimicked daylight through ceiling panels for decades, but actual sunlight streaming through opened vents and newly uncovered windows. In the central plaza, citizens gathered in growing numbers, many experiencing direct sunlight on their faces for the first time in their lives. Cole stood at the edge of this gathering, observing the mixture of wonder, confusion, and nascent joy spreading through the crowd. Beside him, Victor Vane watched with quiet satisfaction, his weathered face turned upward to the sky he had known alone for 35 years. "I'd forgotten how beautiful it could be," Victor said softly. "The way light changes everything it touches." 3 days had passed since the revelation of the city's great deception. 3 days of upheaval, adjustment, and the tentative first steps toward a new order. The mayor remained in custody, along with council members who had perpetuated the system. Hayes had reorganized security forces into a transitional protective service, focused on ensuring safe access to resources rather than enforcing artificial scarcity. Elara approached them, her clipboard filled with the endless details of transition. Despite having barely slept, she radiated purpose and clarity. "The atmospheric equalization is complete in all but the deepest sectors," she reported. "Medical teams are treating the last of the toxin exposure cases, but the prognosis is good for most." "And the casualties?" Cole asked, the question that had weighed on him through sleepless nights. Elara's expression sobered. "Final count stands at 47, mostly elderly or those already compromised by years of substandard air." Cole absorbed this with quiet grief. 47 lives lost in the mayor's final spiteful act, a toll that would have been thousands without their intervention, but still 47 too many. "They won't be forgotten," Victor assured him, reading his thoughts. "Their names will be recorded as the last victims of the old system, not as statistics in a lottery drawing." Marcus joined them, his practical nature having proven invaluable during the transition. He had organized maintenance crews throughout the city, repurposing air processing equipment for ventilation rather than control. "We've completed the survey of the eastern wall section," he announced. "It can be safely opened to create a proper access point to the outside, better than using the emergency exit." "How soon?" Victor asked. By tomorrow, if we work through the night, Marcus replied. People are eager to help. I've got more volunteers than I know what to do with. This was perhaps the most surprising development of the past 3 days, the spontaneous organization of citizens across all sectors, their eagerness to contribute to the transformation. The collapse into selfish chaos that the mayor had predicted had not materialized. Instead, a remarkable spirit of cooperation had emerged, resources shared freely, skills offered without demand for compensation. The exploration teams are assembled and ready, Elara added. 20 volunteers with survival training. They're just waiting for the official approval. Cole nodded thoughtfully. Though breathing outside air was now proven safe, venturing beyond the city walls presented different challenges. The landscape had changed dramatically during their decades of isolation. Maps were outdated, potential hazards unknown. Victor should lead them, Cole suggested. No one knows the outside terrain better. The older man shook his head slightly. I only know the immediate area around my shelter. The wider world remains as much a mystery to me as to anyone else. Still, your experience is invaluable, Elara insisted. The teams need your guidance. Before Victor could respond, a disturbance rippled through the crowd. People were pointing upward, toward one of the largest ventilation openings in the central dome. A bird, an actual living bird, had flown in and was circling the plaza, its wings catching the sunlight. For many citizens, it was the first wildlife they had ever seen. Children squealed in delight. Adults stared in wonder. The simple creature, ordinary in the outside world, but miraculous within these walls, embodied everything about their new reality. Beautiful, unexpected, slightly frightening, and undeniably free. Victor smiled at the sight. Nature finds a way, he observed. Always has. As the crowd's attention followed the bird's flight, Cole noticed a small group approaching them with purpose. Hayes led them, accompanied by several former council members who had claimed ignorance of the mayor's deceptions. Their expressions were grave. We have a problem, Hayes announced without preamble. The mayor has escaped. The emergency council chamber had once been the exclusive domain of the city's ruling elite. Now it served as the headquarters for the transitional authority, a hastily assembled group of sector representatives, technical experts, and security personnel. Maps and schematics covered the walls, communication equipment hummed constantly, and the atmosphere crackled with urgent purpose. He had help, Hayes explained, displaying security footage on the main screen. 2 guards and a medical technician. They overcame the watch during shift change, accessed an emergency vehicle, and headed east. East? Cole questioned. Toward Victor's shelter? Presumably, Hayes confirmed. The vehicle was equipped with exploration gear, supplies for several days, navigation equipment. Victor studied the footage with troubled eyes. Thaddeus wouldn't flee without purpose. He's looking for something. Or someone, Elara suggested. Could there be others outside? More exiles? The question hung in the air. Victor had lived alone for decades, but the possibility of other banished dissidents had never been fully explored. If there are, Victor said slowly, Thaddeus would know where to find them, and why. Marcus, ever practical, refocused the discussion. The eastern section is still sealed except for the emergency exit you used. He can't have gone far without heavy equipment. Unless he knows another way out, Cole suggested. A contingency exit built for the council that wasn't on any official plans. Hayes nodded grimly. It would be consistent with his planning. The mayor prepared for every eventuality. We need to pursue him immediately, Elara insisted. If he reaches whatever he's seeking first... We don't even know what he's after, one of the former council members interrupted. Perhaps we should focus on stabilizing the city instead of chasing ghosts. Cole regarded the man coldly. 3 days ago, Victor Vane was a ghost. Now he stands among us, living proof of decades of deception. I think we've had enough of dismissing inconvenient truths. The rebuke silenced further objections. Hayes outlined a pursuit plan. A small team moving quickly with minimal equipment. The exploration team Elara had assembled could be repurposed for this mission. "I'm going," Cole stated firmly. "I've been outside already. I can handle it." "As am I," Victor added. "No one knows the eastern terrain better." Hayes nodded, expecting these volunteers. "I'll command the security aspect. We should limit the team to essential personnel only. Speed will be crucial." "I'm coming too," Marcus said, surprising everyone. "You'll need someone who understands the city's external infrastructure. And besides," he added with a wry smile toward Cole, "someone has to keep him from doing anything stupid." Elara stepped forward. "I should—" "Stay here," Cole finished for her. "The transition needs your coordination. And if something happens to all of us—" He didn't need to complete the thought. If they failed to return, the city would need leaders who understood the truth, who could continue the transformation. With reluctance, Elara nodded. "Take this," she said, handing Cole her high-precision air quality sensor. "It's calibrated to detect trace elements I found in Victor's soil samples. Might help track where the mayor has gone." As the pursuit team prepared, gathering supplies and communications equipment, Cole found himself drawn to a large viewport that had been uncovered during the transition. The landscape beyond the city walls stretched toward the horizon, intimidating in its vastness but beckoning with possibility. "Scared?" asked Victor, joining him at the window. "Cautious," Cole corrected. "We don't know what's out there." "I've lived in it for 35 years, Victor reminded him. "It's less dangerous than what was in here." He gazed thoughtfully at the vista. "The hardest part isn't surviving the outside. It's unlearning the fear they taught you." Cole considered this. His entire life had been defined by the boundaries of the city, by the constrained thinking required to survive within it. Freedom, true freedom, was as terrifying as it was exhilarating. "What do you think he's looking for?" Cole asked finally. Victor's expression darkened. "Power. It's always been his driving force. Whatever form it takes out there, that's what he seeks." He placed a weathered hand on Cole's shoulder. "Which is why we must find him first." They departed at midday, a team of 8. Cole, Victor, Hayes, Marcus, and 4 security personnel selected for their tracking skills and loyalty to Hayes. They exited through the same emergency door Cole had first used to discover the truth, now permanently unlocked and guarded by citizens rather than security forces. The world beyond the city walls seemed both alien and oddly familiar, though Cole had seen it before. Experiencing it with purpose rather than shock lent everything a new perspective. The air felt different, cleaner, richer, with scents he couldn't identify. The ground beneath his feet alternated between hard-packed earth and patches of struggling vegetation. Victor led them eastward with surprising energy for his age, occasionally stopping to examine tracks or disturbed soil. The mayor's vehicle had left clear evidence of its passage, making tracking initially straightforward. "He's not trying to hide his trail," Hayes observed as they followed the vehicle tracks. "Either he's confident we won't follow, or speed matters more than stealth," Cole finished. "He's racing toward something." As they traveled, Victor pointed out features of the recovering landscape, plants slowly reclaiming areas that had been barren decades earlier, small creatures that had adapted to the post-crisis environment. Life, persistent and evolving, was everywhere if one knew how to see it. "The catastrophe wasn't as complete as they taught us," Victor explained as they walked. "Nature absorbed the worst of it, adapted, and began to heal. If humans had been patient, worked with the recovery instead of retreating from it." He left the thought unfinished, the weight of missed opportunities hanging in the air. By late afternoon, they had traveled several kilometers from the city, its massive dome now visible behind them as a shrinking silhouette against the horizon. Ahead, the landscape changed. More vegetation, taller plants, even stunted trees struggling toward the sky. "The gradient of recovery," Victor explained, noting Cole's observation of the changing terrain. "The further from the epicenter of the crisis, the more complete the healing." Hayes, who had been consulting a portable navigation device, frowned at the readings. The vehicle tracks are heading northeast now, away from your shelter, Victor. Does that mean anything to you? The older man paused, surveying the landscape with narrowed eyes. There was a research outpost in that direction, established before the crisis. We used it for environmental monitoring. It would have been abandoned during the retreat. Could it still be functional? Marcus asked. After all this time? Unlikely, Victor replied. But the structure might remain. And if Thaddeus remembered it. It could be his destination, Cole concluded. How much further? Victor gauged the terrain and the position of the sun, now lowering toward the western horizon. Another hour's journey, perhaps more. We should reach it before dark. They continued their pursuit with renewed purpose, the possibility of a concrete destination lending urgency to their steps. The landscape continued its gradual transformation toward greater fertility. More plants, occasional signs of animal life, a stream with clear flowing water that Victor assured them was safe to drink. As the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the land, Hayes signaled for the group to halt. Just ahead, the vehicle tracks disappeared into a stand of trees. Actual trees. Their trunks thin but their branches spreading toward the sky. The outpost is just beyond that grove, Victor confirmed, his voice hushed with memory. We used to monitor air quality changes from here, tracking the dispersion patterns of the toxins. Hayes deployed his team in a careful approach pattern. Weapons ready, though, set to non-lethal function. Cole found himself moving instinctively beside Victor, protective of the older man despite his decades of survival experience. Your mother helped establish this outpost, Victor said suddenly as they crept forward. Marion was one of our best environmental technicians. She understood the patterns, saw the healing beginning before anyone else. Cole absorbed this new information about his mother, this piece of her hidden history. Why didn't she leave with you? When they exiled you? She was pregnant, Victor replied simply. With you. We agreed she had a better chance of survival inside the city. I would find proof outside. She would gather evidence inside. When the time was right, we would expose the truth together. The revelation struck Cole deeply. His entire existence had been intertwined with this struggle for truth from before his birth. His mother's sacrifice took on new dimensions of meaning. They reached the edge of the tree grove, the outpost now visible beyond, a low, bunker-like structure partially reclaimed by vegetation. The mayor's vehicle was parked outside, confirming their theory. Hayes signaled for them to spread out, establishing a perimeter around the structure. Through a still intact window, lights could be seen. The outpost apparently had functioning power. How is that possible? Marcus whispered. After all this time? Solar collection systems with backup power cells, Victor explained, designed to operate autonomously for decades. We built things to last in those days. Hayes approached Cole and Victor, keeping low. No movement visible inside. The entrance appears to be a reinforced door on the south side. Security systems are likely offline after all this time. Don't underestimate the engineering, Victor cautioned, and don't underestimate my brother. If he's reactivated the power... Before he could complete the thought, floodlights suddenly illuminated the area surrounding the outpost, triggered by some unseen sensor. The pursuit team froze, caught in the harsh glare. Proximity detectors, Victor muttered. Still functional after all these years? A voice echoed from the outpost's external speaker system. The mayor's voice, calm and almost amused. Brother, I wondered when you would arrive. Always so predictable in your righteousness. Hayes signaled his team to take cover, but the damage was done. Their presence was known. Thaddeus, Victor called out, standing upright despite Hayes' gesture to stay down. Whatever you're planning, it's over. The city knows the truth. Truth, the mayor's voice echoed back. Such a malleable concept. Today's truth becomes tomorrow's lie when circumstances change. Cole moved to stand beside Victor, facing the outpost directly. What are you doing here? What's worth fleeing for? Not fleeing, Mr. Davidson, came the smooth reply. Repositioning. There's a difference that someone of your limited perspective might not appreciate. Enough games, Hayes shouted. You're under arrest for crimes against the citizens. Surrender yourself. A chuckle emanated from the speakers. I'm afraid that won't be possible, Chief Hayes. I have far too much work to do. A pause, then. Victor, you of all people should appreciate what I've discovered here. The outpost's long-term monitoring data makes for fascinating reading. Victor tensed visibly. What data? The systems were shut down during the retreat. Not shut down, the mayor corrected. Transferred to autonomous mode, recording faithfully for decades while you played at being a hermit just kilometers away. Such a waste of your talents. Cole noted Victor's growing concern. What's he talking about? What data? Before Victor could answer, the mayor continued. I'll make this simple. I have information you want. You have a city I want returned to proper order. Perhaps we can negotiate a mutually beneficial arrangement. Hayes shook his head firmly. There will be no negotiations. The old system is gone. Systems never truly disappear, Chief Hayes. They merely adapt, evolve. The mayor's voice took on an edge of cold certainty. And sometimes they return when circumstances demand it. Victor stepped forward, his weathered face illuminated starkly in the floodlights. What have you found in the data, Thaddeus? Tell me. A long silence followed, as if the mayor was considering his response. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost its performative quality, becoming something rarer, sincere. The crisis is returning, brother. The atmospheric toxins are rebuilding. Slowly, yes, but the pattern is unmistakable. Your precious freedom has an expiration date. Inside the outpost, the mayor sat calmly at a control console, the screens around him displaying decades of environmental data collected by sensors throughout the region. After tense negotiations conducted through the speaker system, Hayes had agreed to enter with Cole and Victor, while Marcus and the security team maintained their positions outside. The interior of the research station was surprisingly well preserved, its systems having continued their silent operations long after human abandonment. Dust covered unused surfaces, but the environmental seals had maintained the integrity of the equipment. 35 years of continuous monitoring, the mayor explained, gesturing to the displays. While you lived in your crude shelter believing you had won, Victor, the data was proving you wrong. Victor studied the screens intently, his expertise with environmental systems evident as he navigated through the accumulated information. Cole watched his expression carefully, searching for confirmation or denial of the mayor's claims. These readings, Victor murmured, focusing on particular data sets. The toxic concentrations in the upper atmosphere are increasing, the mayor finished for him, have been for the past decade. Slowly, almost imperceptibly. But the trend is clear. The crisis that drove us into the dome wasn't an endpoint. It was a cycle. And we're approaching another peak. Hayes remained skeptical. Convenient timing for such a discovery. I've suspected for years, the mayor countered. Why do you think I maintained the air control system so rigorously? I knew they would be needed again. Cole approached the console, examining the data himself. Though he lacked Victor's expertise, the visualization of atmospheric composition over time was clear enough. A gradual downward trend in toxins for decades, followed by a subtle but definite reversal beginning approximately 10 years earlier. If this is accurate, Cole said cautiously, what's the time frame? How long before the air becomes truly dangerous again? At current rates of increase, perhaps 15 years, the mayor replied, possibly longer with fluctuations, but eventually the outside will become uninhabitable again. Victor continued his analysis, cross-referencing different data sets with practiced efficiency. The pattern is concerning, he admitted finally, but it's not conclusive. The increases could be regional, temporary. Are you willing to risk the lives of every citizen on that hope? The mayor challenged. Your precious liberation could lead to extinction, if I'm right. Cole watched the brothers, so similar in their analytical minds, so different in their fundamental approach to humanity. Where Victor saw potential for adaptation and cooperation, Thaddeus saw only threat and the need for control. Even if these readings are accurate, Cole pointed out, it doesn't justify what you did. You could have prepared the city gradually, developed true environmental protections instead of using air as a control mechanism. Humans respond to immediate fears, not distant threats, the mayor dismissed. The lottery maintained order, purpose. Without it, you'll have chaos long before the toxins become lethal. Hayes, who had been examining the outpost's security systems, rejoined the conversation. The Transition Council needs to see this data. Full transparency. Let people understand what may be coming. And watch them descend into panic, the mayor scoffed. They'll tear each other apart competing for safe positions. You underestimate them, Victor said quietly, just as you always have. People can face difficult truths when given the chance. The debate was interrupted by Marcus's voice over the communication device. Hayes, we've got movement outside. Multiple signatures approaching from the northeast. All 4 men tensed, the confrontation temporarily suspended by this new development. Signatures? Hayes questioned. What kind of signatures? Human, came Marcus's astonished reply. A group of them. On foot. At least a dozen, maybe more. Cole and Victor exchanged shocked glances. The implication was staggering. Other people, living outside the city, surviving in the world they had been taught was uninhabitable. Impossible, the mayor whispered, but his usual certainty had vanished. They moved to the outpost's viewing window, peering out into the fading daylight. Sure enough, a group was approaching, men and women dressed in practical clothing clearly adapted for outdoor living. They moved with the confidence of people familiar with the terrain, carrying simple weapons and equipment. Who are they? Cole wondered aloud. The other settlements, Victor breathed, understanding dawning in his eyes. They survived. What other settlements? Hayes demanded. Before the crisis peaked, some communities rejected the dome solution, Victor explained rapidly, chose to establish self-sufficient outposts instead, using environmental shelters and adaptation techniques. The council declared them doomed, wrote them off as lost. Clearly, they weren't lost, Cole observed as the group drew nearer. The mayor had gone very still, his worldview visibly crumbling as he watched these living contradictions approach. We received no communications, no signals. Because you weren't listening, Victor replied simply. The dome was sealed, the narrative established. Outside contact would have undermined your control. Hayes made a quick tactical assessment. They outnumber us. We should establish contact, determine if they're hostile. They've survived out here all this time, Cole reasoned. If they wanted to threaten the city, they could have done so years ago. Decision made, Hayes signaled Marcus to hold position but not engage. Cole, Victor, and Hayes stepped outside the outpost, the mayor following reluctantly after a moment's hesitation. The group of outsiders stopped about 30 meters away, observing the outpost and its visitors with careful attention. At a signal from one who appeared to be their leader, 2 stepped forward, a man and woman, both in their 50s, with the weathered appearance of people who lived with the elements. Victor Vane, the woman called, recognition and surprise evident in her voice. After all these years, Victor squinted in the fading light. Then his face transformed with astonishment. Elena? Elena Sorokin? The woman smiled, approaching closer. You remember. Good. It's been, 35 years? You know these people? Cole asked Victor quietly. Elena was our lead adaptation specialist, Victor explained rapidly. She chose to remain outside when the retreat was ordered, taking a research team with her. He stepped forward, extending his hand in greeting. I thought you were all dead. The council reported no survivors from the external stations. Elena clasped his hand firmly. The council reported what was convenient. We've been thriving at the northern settlement for decades. She glanced at the mayor, recognition hardening her expression. And I see Thaddeus is still enforcing his version of reality. The mayor's composure, so rarely disturbed, was thoroughly shaken. How many of you are there? How have you survived the toxins? Which toxins? Elena asked pointedly. The ones that dissipated years ago, or the ones you pumped into your own city to maintain control? Hayes stepped forward, introducing himself and Cole. We've only recently learned the truth about our situation. The city is in transition. Elena studied him thoughtfully. So the dome has finally opened. We wondered if that day would ever come. You've been watching us? Cole asked. From a distance, the man beside Elena confirmed. Standard protocol. Observe, but don't interfere unless absolutely necessary. Why didn't you contact us? Hayes demanded. People were dying from artificial scarcity. Elena's expression softened slightly. We tried in the early years. 3 envoys approached the city with evidence of outside recovery. None returned. After that, our council voted to maintain distance until the Dome Society evolved on its own. All eyes turned to the mayor, the implication clear. His face remained impassive, but he offered no denial. How many settlements are there? Victor asked, changing the subject. 3 that we maintain regular contact with, Elena replied. North, east, and western settlements. Perhaps 2,000 people total. We've adapted to the changing conditions, developed protective measures for atmospheric fluctuations. Then you've noticed the toxin increases, the mayor interjected. Elena nodded, her expression grave. 10 years ago. Our monitoring systems detected the pattern. We've been preparing accordingly, improving our environmental shelters, developing new filtration technologies. This confirmation of the data's accuracy silenced everyone momentarily. The threat was real, not a fabrication of the mayor's desperation. We should continue this discussion inside, Victor suggested as darkness began to fall in earnest. There's much to share on both sides. Elena agreed, dispatching most of her group to establish a perimeter camp, while she and 3 others accompanied the city delegation into the outpost. As they settled around the main monitoring station, the historic significance of the moment was lost on no one. Representatives of 2 divergent paths of human survival reunited after decades of separation. Our settlements have been adapting to environmental changes for generations, Elena explained, reviewing the monitoring data with practiced expertise. The current toxin increase is concerning, but manageable, with proper preparation. The Dome City has more advanced technology, the mayor pointed out. Stricter environmental controls. And no practical experience living with changing conditions, Elena countered. Your technology created a perfect bubble that couldn't last. Our methods evolved with the challenges. Throughout this exchange, Cole observed something remarkable. The gradual transformation of the mayor from confident autocrat to uncertain participant, faced with living proof that his entire philosophy of control had been unnecessary, that humans could indeed adapt without his lottery system. His certainty was visibly crumbling. The question, Hayes interjected pragmatically, is what we do now. The city is in the midst of radical change. If another atmospheric crisis is approaching, even decades away, people deserve to know. Knowledge without panic, Victor agreed. Preparation without control. Elena studied the men from the Dome City thoughtfully. Perhaps it's time for reunification. Our settlements have developed techniques for surviving atmospheric fluctuations. Your city has preserved technology and knowledge we could utilize. Together, we might be better prepared than either alone. The proposal hung in the air, a collaborative future instead of isolation. Cole found himself drawn to the idea immediately, seeing in it the possibility of genuine freedom combined with shared security. The Transition Council would need to approve any formal arrangement, Hayes said carefully. But speaking personally, I see tremendous value in collaboration. Victor turned to his brother, who had remained uncharacteristically silent. Thaddeus? You've built your life on the principle that humans need to be controlled for their own safety. Here's living proof of an alternative. What say you? The mayor's gaze moved slowly around the room, from the settlement representatives to Hayes, from Cole to his brother. When he finally spoke, his voice lacked its usual authoritative resonance. I believed what I did was necessary, he said quietly. That control was the only path to survival. And now, Victor pressed, A long pause followed, the weight of decades of deception hanging in the balance. I was incorrect in my assessment, the mayor finally conceded. Though the threat was real, my response was flawed. The admission, so simple yet so profound from a man who had never acknowledged error, stunned everyone present. Cole searched the mayor's face for signs of manipulation, but found only the confusion of someone whose fundamental worldview had collapsed. Then perhaps, Victor suggested gently, you might contribute to building something better. Your administrative skills could be valuable in a transparent system. The mayor met his brother's gaze, decades of conflict suspended in this moment of possibility. I would consider such an arrangement. Elena cleared her throat, bringing the focus back to immediate concerns. Whatever governance evolves will take time. Meanwhile, we should address practical matters. Your city needs education about outside survival. Our settlements could provide trainers, guides for exploration. And we can share medical and technological resources, Hayes added. Establish communication systems between all communities. As the discussion continued, plans taking shape for immediate cooperation and longer-term integration, Cole found himself standing slightly apart, watching this historic negotiation with a sense of wonder. Just days ago, he had been a desperate man with hours of air remaining, trapped in a system designed to control through scarcity. Now he stood witness to the birth of a new relationship between long-separated branches of humanity. Victor noticed his withdrawal and joined him by the window, where the lights of the settlement group's camp were now visible in the darkness. Overwhelming, isn't it? The older man asked quietly. Cole nodded. Everything we believed, everything we feared, was both true and false, Victor finished for him. The crisis was real. The recovery was real. The threat is returning. But the response, that's where humanity always has a choice. Do you think it can work? This collaboration? Victor considered the question seriously. It won't be easy. The city dwellers have no experience with true environmental adaptation. The settlement people have developed their own cultures, their own ways. Integration will be challenging. But necessary, Cole concluded. If the toxins are returning, we need each other. Precisely. Victor's weathered face creased in a smile. Necessity has always been humanity's greatest teacher, and its greatest unifier. Dawn broke over the research outpost, illuminating a scene that would have been unimaginable just days earlier. Representatives from the Dome City and the external settlements gathered around outdoor cooking fires, sharing breakfast and stories, as if decades of separation had been merely a brief interlude. The night had been filled with planning sessions, data sharing, and the gradual emergence of a framework for cooperation. Elena's team had communicated with the other settlements via a radio network maintained throughout the years of isolation. Initial skepticism had given way to cautious optimism about reconnection with the Dome City. Cole found himself continually surprised by the settlement's adaptations. They had developed seasonal migration patterns to avoid atmospheric toxin concentrations, created natural filtration systems using specific plant combinations, and established early warning networks to monitor environmental changes. The key was flexibility, Elena explained as she showed Cole their portable shelter designs. Your city's approach was static, a perfect environment maintained artificially. Ours evolved with the planet's healing and changing. Hayes had established secure communications with Elara back in the city, transmitting the environmental data and news of the settlement's existence. Her initial shock had quickly transformed into practical planning, preparing the citizens for this expansion of their world, organizing reception committees, assembling integration teams. Even the mayor had found purpose in the night's activities, his administrative expertise put to use organizing the massive amount of information being shared. Though still under Hayes's watchful eye, he worked with growing engagement, occasionally offering insights that even Elena acknowledged as valuable. As morning councils convened around the outpost's main table, Victor presented the joint recommendation developed through the night's discussions. We propose a phased integration, he explained, addressing representatives from both communities. beginning with knowledge exchange and mutual assistance, progressing to optional relocation programs for citizens who wish to experience alternative living arrangements. Elena continued, "The environmental data confirms that we have time to prepare methodically for the returning atmospheric challenges, approximately 15 years before protective measures become essential. Our settlements have developed filtered living spaces for the high-toxin seasons," added one of Elena's colleagues. "These could be adapted for city sectors if necessary. And the city's air processing technology could be repurposed for genuine filtration rather than control," Marcus pointed out, "creating clean air zones throughout the region." Hayes outlined the security considerations: protecting vulnerable populations during transition, establishing communication protocols between all communities, creating emergency response teams trained in both city and settlement survival techniques. Throughout the presentations, Cole observed the mayor's reactions carefully. The man who had once ruled through fear and artificial scarcity now sat quietly, absorbing these collaborative approaches with what appeared to be genuine consideration. When the planning session concluded, a practical schedule had been established. Elena and a small delegation would return with them to the city, while other settlement representatives would prepare their communities for increased contact. Knowledge exchange would begin immediately, with exploration teams mapping safe routes between all locations. As they prepared to depart, Cole found himself standing beside the mayor at the outpost's viewport, both men gazing toward the now visible dome of the city gleaming in the morning sun. "It looks different from outside," Cole observed. "Smaller. Yet, it dominated our entire existence," the mayor replied, his voice contemplative rather than commanding. "Our whole world, in miniature." Cole studied the man who had been the architect of so much suffering, searching for signs of the calculating manipulator he had been just days ago. Instead, he found a person visibly adrift, his certainties dissolving in the face of incontrovertible evidence. "What will you do now?" Cole asked directly. The mayor considered the question with surprising honesty. "I don't know. The system I built is gone. The beliefs that sustained it. Proven false." He turned to face Cole fully. "What does one do when one's life's work is revealed as fundamentally flawed?" "Learn," Cole suggested simply. "Adapt. Contribute differently." Is redemption possible after causing such harm? The question seemed directed more to himself than to Cole. "That's not for me to determine," Cole replied carefully. "But the future needs everyone's contributions, even yours, perhaps especially yours. You understand systems, organization, long-term planning?" The mayor nodded slowly, his gaze returning to the distant city. "Applied to liberation rather than control. An ironic twist to my life's narrative." Further conversation was interrupted by Hayes announcing their departure. The return journey would begin immediately, with Elena's delegation and the mayor under careful escort. The environmental data had been secured for presentation to the Transition Council, and settlement representatives were already mapping routes for future exchange missions. As they gathered their equipment, Victor approached Cole with a surprising announcement. "I'm not returning to the city yet," he said quietly. "Elena has invited me to visit the northern settlement first. There are researchers there who continued my work all these years, but the city needs you," Cole protested. "The transition is in capable hands," Victor finished, glancing meaningfully at Cole. "You understand the truth now. You can represent my perspective until I return in a few days." Cole accepted this with reluctance, recognizing Victor's need to connect with those who had maintained his vision during his isolated years. They embraced briefly, the older man extracting a promise that Cole would ensure fair treatment of the mayor, despite their history. "He was wrong. Grievously wrong," Victor acknowledged. "But he's still my brother. And he still has contributions to make, if allowed." The return journey began under clear skies, their party now joined by Elena and 3 settlement representatives. They traveled more directly than they had during the pursuit, following established routes the settlers had used for years to monitor the city from a distance. As they walked, Elena shared stories of the settlement's evolution, The challenges of the early years, the adaptations that had allowed them to survive, the gradual development of a society that moved with environmental changes rather than fighting against them. "We watched your city all this time," she told Cole. "Lights visible at night, occasional glimpses of activity near exterior maintenance areas. We debated intervention many times over the decades." "Why didn't you?" Cole asked. "You could have helped those suffering inside." Elena's expression grew somber. "The first 3 times we tried, our envoys disappeared. After that, our council made a difficult decision to wait until your society evolved to the point of receptiveness. We maintained surveillance, prepared for contact, but allowed your natural development." "Natural development through artificial manipulation," Cole noted bitterly. "Yes," Elena acknowledged. "We recognized the control patterns from outside observations, but cultural evolution often requires internal catalysts." She glanced at him significantly. "Catalysts like you, questioning the system from within." By midday, the dome city had grown from a distant silhouette to an imposing presence on the horizon. Word of their approach had evidently spread. A welcoming committee was visible at the newly established eastern entrance. A crowd gathered behind temporary barriers. As they drew closer, Cole could make out Elara at the forefront, coordinating the reception. Screens had been erected to broadcast the historic arrival to sectors throughout the city. What might have been a simple return had become a symbolic moment. The official first contact between the dome city and the settlements that had survived independently. The mayor, walking under Hayes's watchful supervision, faltered slightly at the sight. "They're going to want justice," he observed quietly to Cole. "Punishment for what I did." "They'll want truth first," Cole corrected. "Justice will follow, but it may take forms you don't expect." When they finally reached the entrance, the moment unfolded with unexpected grace. Elara stepped forward, formally welcoming Elena and her delegation as honored guests. The settlement representatives presented symbolic gifts, seeds from plants that thrived in the recovering ecosystem, designs for portable shelters, environmental monitoring tools they had developed over decades. In return, Elara offered access to the city's medical facilities, technological resources, and educational systems. The formal exchange, broadcast throughout the city, established the tone for what would follow. Not conquest or assimilation, but mutual respect and cooperation. Cole found himself standing slightly apart from the ceremony, watching the citizens' reactions as they witnessed living proof that survival outside the dome was not merely possible, but had been a reality for generations. Expressions ranged from wonder to confusion to anger as implications settled into understanding. "It's a lot to absorb," observed Marcus, joining him at the perimeter. "Everything we believed about the outside world overturned in an instant." "Just as the lottery was overturned," Cole agreed. "The truth has a way of demanding adjustment." Their conversation was interrupted as Hayes escorted the mayor forward. A hush fell over the crowd as they recognized the architect of the system that had controlled their lives. Some called for immediate punishment, others watched in wary silence. Elara raised her hands for quiet, her authority in the transition now firmly established. "Thaddeus Vane will face a citizens' tribunal," she announced clearly. "His actions will be examined through fair process. His knowledge utilized where beneficial. Justice determined by collective deliberation rather than reactive punishment." The mayor received this pronouncement with dignified acceptance, neither protesting nor pleading as Hayes led him to the temporary detention facility established in the former council chambers. As the formal reception concluded, the real work began. Elena's delegation was escorted to quarters prepared for them, while transition teams organized the first information sessions for citizens eager to learn about the settlements in the outside world. Cole found himself consistently sought out by citizens with questions about his first experience outside, by settlement representatives curious about life within the dome, by transition council members seeking his perspective on integration planning. By evening, Exhaustion had overtaken excitement. Cole retreated to a quiet observation platform overlooking the central plaza, watching as citizens continued gathering in small groups, processing the day's revelations through conversation and community. Elara found him there, bringing food and the latest updates from the Transition Council. The settlement representatives have shared their atmospheric data, she reported. It confirms what the outpost recorded. Toxin levels are gradually increasing. We have years to prepare, but preparation must begin now. Cole nodded, unsurprised. How are people taking the news? Better than expected, Elara replied. After discovering decades of lies about current conditions, they're remarkably receptive to transparent warnings about future challenges. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, watching the city adjust to its new reality. Below them, a settlement representative was demonstrating portable filtration equipment to an attentive group of former, lower-level citizens. We've established the tribunal schedule, Elara continued eventually. The mayor and cooperative council members will provide complete information about the system's operation, then face judgment from citizen representatives of all sectors. And the punishment? Cole asked, uncertain of his own desires in this regard. Will fit the crime, Elara assured him, but with purpose rather than vengeance. Their knowledge is valuable, their administrative skills needed. Another silence fell between them, filled with the distant sounds of a city transforming, conversations, occasional laughter, the busy activity of people discovering purpose beyond survival. What about you? Elara asked finally. The Transition Council has offered you a permanent position as liaison between the city and settlements. Cole considered this, gazing out at the city that had been his prison and was now becoming something else entirely, a base for exploration, a center for integration, a community preparing for challenges with truth rather than manipulation. I think I'd prefer something more direct, he decided. Working with the exploration teams, mapping the routes between communities, helping citizens adjust to outside conditions. Elara smiled, unsurprised. I thought you might say that. The first training group departs tomorrow. They could use someone with your experience. The conversation drifted to practical matters. Equipment needs, communication protocols, safety procedures for citizens venturing outside for the first time. Throughout, Cole found himself repeatedly drawn to the view of the night sky, visible through the opened central vents. Stars shining in darkness. The same stars his mother had described to him as a child. The stars Victor had watched alone for 35 years. We should sleep, Elara eventually suggested. Tomorrow will be busy. Before they parted ways, Cole asked the question that had been forming throughout the day. Do you think we can do it? Integrate these different worlds? Prepare for the coming challenges? Build something better than what we had before? Elara considered this seriously, her analytical mind weighing possibilities against obstacles. I think, she said finally, that humanity's greatest strength has always been adaptation. The Dome City adapted through control. The settlements adapted through flexibility. Now we adapt through integration. She gestured toward the central plaza, where citizens continued their eager explorations of settlement technology, asking questions, offering suggestions, engaging with their expanded world. Look at them. 2 days ago they were trapped in artificial scarcity, competing for breath. Now they're planning collaborative solutions for challenges decades away. Cole nodded, finding unexpected hope in the scene below. From the lottery to the open sky, he mused. Quite a journey in just a few days. With many more days ahead, Elara reminded him. The real work is just beginning. 3 months later, Cole stood at the edge of a ridge overlooking the western settlement, the Dome City visible as a distant silhouette on the eastern horizon. Around him, a mixed group of city dwellers and settlement guides prepared equipment for the journey back, exchanging contact information and final observations. The integration program had progressed more smoothly than anyone had anticipated. Citizens from all sectors had volunteered for exploration and exchange missions, eager to experience the world beyond their walls. Settlement representatives had established permanent offices within the city, offering training in environmental adaptation and outdoor survival. Victor had returned from his visit to the northern settlement reinvigorated, bringing additional researchers and decades of independent environmental studies. Working alongside Elena and former city scientists, he had established a comprehensive monitoring network that tracked atmospheric conditions throughout the region, providing early warning of toxin concentration shifts. The mayor's tribunal had concluded with a sentence that surprised many but satisfied most. He and cooperative council members were assigned to integration planning teams, their administrative expertise channeled toward building connections rather than maintaining barriers. Their knowledge of city systems proved invaluable in repurposing air processing equipment for genuine environmental protection. Restricted to the city and under continuous supervision, Thaddeus Vane had gradually transformed from reluctant participant to active contributor. Though few would ever forgive him entirely, many acknowledged the value of his organizational abilities when directed toward collective benefit rather than control. As Cole prepared to lead his group back to the city, Marcus approached with the latest atmospheric readings. "Toxin levels stable this month," he reported. "The settlement's natural filtration systems are performing well in the test areas we established." Cole nodded, pleased but not surprised. The collaborative projects had yielded promising results. City technology combined with settlement adaptation techniques creating multiple layers of protection against the gradually changing atmosphere. "The first permanent exchange residents move into their settlement quarters next week," Marcus continued. 26 city volunteers for long-term integration. "And settlement residents coming to the city?" Cole asked. 18 so far, mostly researchers and adaptation specialists. "They're fascinated by our technology, though they find our living arrangements claustrophobic." Marcus grinned. "Elena says they keep trying to grow plants in the council chambers." Cole laughed, imagining the former seats of power transformed by greenery. "Let them. We could use more life in those rooms." As the group began their journey eastward, Cole reflected on the transformation of the past 3 months. The Dome City had opened additional access points, creating dedicated routes to each settlement. Citizens moved increasingly freely between communities, learning and sharing as they went. Children who had never seen the sky now played in carefully monitored outside areas, developing natural immunity to the minor irritants of the external atmosphere. The transition had not been without challenges. Some citizens, particularly from the upper levels, resisted the disruption of their privileged existence. Occasional conflicts arose between city and settlement approaches to resource management and decision-making. The psychological adjustment to expansive horizons after lifetimes of enclosure proved difficult for many, but the fundamental shift had taken hold. From scarcity to possibility, from control to collaboration, from fear to preparation. The lottery that had determined life and death through artificial scarcity was dismantled entirely, its mechanisms repurposed for equitable resource distribution based on actual need rather than social control. As they crested a hill that offered a clear view of both the settlements and the city, Cole paused to appreciate the symbolism of their position, balanced between worlds, connecting divided branches of humanity, building something neither could have created alone. One of the city dwellers in his group, a former lower-level resident named Talia, stopped beside him. "I never imagined I'd see this," she said quietly, gesturing toward the vast landscape. "My grandmother used to tell stories about the outside world, but I thought they were just dreams." "Many of us did," Cole acknowledged. "We were taught to fear what we could have embraced." "Do you think about your mother often?" Talia asked. "About what she sacrificed for this moment?" Cole nodded, touched by the personal question. Victor had shared more details about Marion Davidson's role in the early resistance, her meticulous gathering of environmental evidence, her quiet support network for those questioning the lottery system, her ultimate choice to give her son air at the cost of her own life. "She believed the truth would eventually emerge," Cole replied, "that humans deserve to breathe free air and make free choices, even if those choices sometimes led to mistakes." "She was right," Talia said simply, gazing toward the horizon where settlement and city existed in visual balance. They resumed their journey, moving at the careful pace required by those still adjusting to external conditions. Regular rest stops allowed for atmospheric readings and adjustment of personal filtration devices. simple masks used during higher toxin concentrations. Another integration of city technology and settlement wisdom. As they approached the eastern entrance to the Dome City, Cole could see the changes visible even from a distance. The formerly sealed structure now featured multiple access points, external monitoring stations, and the beginnings of experimental gardens testing which plants might thrive in the transitional soil. Elara waited at the entrance, reviewing data on her tablet as they approached. After exchanging formal reports, she walked with Cole toward the central plaza where integration updates were scheduled to be shared with the gathered citizens. The tribunal completed its review of the historical records, she informed him quietly. They found evidence confirming what Victor suspected. Envoys from the settlements were indeed intercepted and eliminated during the early years. 3 separate contact attempts. Cole absorbed this grim confirmation of the mayor's ruthlessness. Will this be announced today? Yes, Elara confirmed. Full transparency. Even when the truth is painful, we don't repeat their mistakes. The central plaza had been transformed from its lottery drawing configuration to an open forum space with screens displaying real-time atmospheric data and settlement information. Citizens gathered in growing numbers, many now comfortable enough to leave their breathing apparatus deactivated while inside the city's purified zones. As Victor took the podium to present the latest integration progress, Cole scanned the crowd. Former upper-level elites now sat alongside lower-level workers, their previous social distinctions increasingly meaningless in a world where adaptation skills mattered more than historical privilege. Settlement representatives mingled freely, their practical knowledge eagerly sought by city dwellers planning their first external excursions. The mayor sat at the edge of the gathering, still under supervision but now actively engaged in the integration planning he presented each week. His brother's presence seemed to have softened his rigid worldview, though he remained pragmatic about the challenges ahead. The presentations covered progress in all key areas: environmental monitoring, filtration technology, settlement expansion, and city adaptation. Atmospheric projections confirmed the gradual increase in toxins would continue, but with multiple protective systems now in development, the threat appeared manageable rather than apocalyptic. When the formal sessions concluded, Victor joined Cole at the perimeter of the plaza. One of my researchers made an interesting discovery at the northern settlement, he said without preamble. Evidence suggesting the atmospheric toxin cycle might be influenced by controlled releases from old industrial containment zones. Cole considered the implications, meaning the cycle could potentially be moderated? Possibly, Victor confirmed, with proper intervention at key sites. We're organizing an exploration mission to investigate further. I want to join it, Cole said immediately, drawn to the possibility of addressing the root cause rather than merely adapting to its effects. Victor smiled knowingly. I thought you might. Elena is assembling the team now. You'll depart next week. As night fell over the city, lights illuminated the central plaza where citizens continued their discussions long after the formal presentations had ended. Where once the lottery drawing had dominated this space, with its ritual of controlled scarcity, now collaborative planning flourished, settlement farming techniques shared alongside city manufacturing processes, adaptation strategies discussed beside technological innovations. Cole found himself walking alone through the sectors that had once defined the rigid social hierarchy. The physical boundaries remained, but their meaning had transformed. Former upper-level residents now volunteered in lower-level adaptation training. Former lower-level workers now contributed valuable practical skills to filtration system development. He eventually made his way to the small memorial space established near the eastern entrance, a simple garden where the names of those who had died for the truth were displayed. His mother's name held a place of honor, alongside others who had questioned the lottery system and paid with their lives. A familiar figure stood before the memorial, the mayor, accompanied by his security supervisor, but otherwise alone in the dimly lit space. Cole approached quietly, standing beside the man who had ordered his mother's name added to this list of casualties. I come here every evening, the mayor said without turning. I read every name, remember every file, every order. Cole remained silent, allowing the moment to unfold without interruption. Your mother was remarkable, the mayor continued unexpectedly. Even as we monitored her activities, she managed to distribute information, build support networks. We never identified all her contacts. Why are you telling me this? Cole asked. The mayor finally turned to face him. Because you deserve to know that her sacrifice meant something, that she accomplished more than she realized. He gestured toward the city beyond the memorial garden. This transformation began decades ago, with people like your mother who refused to accept the necessary lie. It was never necessary, Cole stated firmly. I believed it was, the mayor replied, no longer defensive but reflective. The psychology of scarcity creates controllable populations. Abundance creates unpredictable outcomes. Like cooperation, innovation, hope. Precisely. The mayor studied the memorial for a long moment. In creating perfect control, I eliminated the very adaptability humanity needed to face genuine challenges. The irony doesn't escape me. They stood in silence as darkness settled fully over the city, stars visible through the open central vents above the plaza. Around them, the sounds of a community in transformation continued. Conversations, planning sessions, the occasional laughter of children who would grow up knowing both the security of the dome and the freedom of the open sky. The future will require both approaches, the mayor observed finally, structure and adaptation, systems and flexibility. He glanced at Cole. Your generation will need to balance these forces better than mine did. We will, Cole assured him, not from blind optimism, but from witnessing 3 months of remarkable transformation. Because we'll build that future together with truth rather than manipulation. As Cole left the memorial garden, he paused to look upward at the stars his mother had described to him as a child. The same stars that had guided the settlements through decades of independent survival. The same stars that now served as common reference points for all communities. The lottery that had dominated his existence was gone, its control mechanisms dismantled, its artificial scarcity replaced by collaborative resource management. In its place stood something more complex but infinitely more valuable. A society learning to face challenges honestly, to adapt without abandoning protection, to balance structure with freedom. The open sky above the city represented more than just physical liberation. It symbolized the expansion of possibility that comes when artificial limitations are removed, when humans are allowed to breathe freely, think freely, and determine their collective future with clear eyes and shared purpose. The path ahead would not be easy. The atmospheric changes would require ongoing adaptation. The integration of different cultures would present continuing challenges, and the trauma of decades of control would not heal overnight. But, with each passing day, the foundation grew stronger, built on transparency, cooperation, and the remarkable human capacity for transformation. Cole turned toward the central plaza, where tomorrow's planning sessions would begin early. The future awaited, neither the controlled perfection the mayor had envisioned nor the chaotic collapse he had feared, but something uniquely human in its imperfect, adaptive, resilient potential. The drawing was over. Life, in all its complexity, had begun.
Enjoying the story? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss a new chapter. Episodes drop every week. Be part of the adventure. And if you're hooked, leave a like and comment your thoughts. Your support helps keep the story alive.